Bright light streamed through the window. The dining table was lavishly set. The servants took turns cheering. "Congratulations, sir. Congratulations, young Master Isaac. At only 10 years old, you've already received a nomination letter to the Royal Academy. You truly are a genius." Lyra offered a gentle, radiant smile. "Congratulations, sir." She added, "Young master, since today is a big day, I've prepared all your favorite dishes." Isaac smiled in response. "Thank you, Nanny." He happily accepted it all. Han brought over a large box. "Please take this as well. It's a small gift from me." Isaac was startled. "A gift? I already told you that you didn't have to be so formal." Han insisted. "How could I not? Thanks to the medicine you gave me when my son was sick, he kept his life," he said firmly. "Compared to that favor, this offering is nothing." Isaac couldn't help but feel moved. "All right, I'll take it, thank you." Jonas suddenly ran over, beaming, "Brother, brother." The boy excitedly brought his instrument along. "Let me play a song to celebrate for you." Isaac was extremely surprised. Han whispered to him, "Young Master Jonas's talent for the instrument is so outstanding that even the court musicians praised him as a prodigy last time." Isaac smiled back. "Is that so? Then go ahead and play it for me." Jonas immediately prepared. "Yes, sir." Small fingers plucked the strings, but the peaceful scene gradually began to fade. "Jonas, Jonas, don't." Isaac jolted awake in bed. It took him a moment to regain his senses. Was it just a dream? Isaac muttered to himself, "How ridiculous. It seems I dreamed of a distant past. I can't go back to those times anymore." Familiar footsteps approached. Lucas arrived quickly. He brought breakfast with him. "The sun is already up, young Master Isaac." Lucas immediately sensed something was off. He realized Isaac didn't look well. "It seems you just had a nightmare. You look terrible." Isaac replied wearily, rubbing his aching temples. "I just dreamt of a few old things." Lucas asked casually, "How long ago?" Isaac answered vaguely that it was about 20 years ago. Lucas set the breakfast aside. "That was a long time ago." Instead of dwelling on those old memories, Lucas introduced the food. "How about we try some fresh cheese? After we finish our meal, we'll start the sword training we left unfinished yesterday." Lucas left quickly. "Enjoy your meal." Isaac frowned in thought. About 20 years ago, when he was around 10, 1 month before entering the Royal Academy, he had caught a sudden, severe flu. The illness dragged on for 3 months. Seeing that the situation showed no signs of improvement, his father, Count von Goethe, had to seek out scholars at the Magic Tower. He received the news. "Is it because of a special constitution?" The mage confirmed, "As you know, every living creature possesses its own innate mana reservoir. Mana circulates at a speed corresponding to the size of that container. However, the mana circulation in your son's body is extremely irregular. It is so fast and violent that it's impossible to predict. At this rate, it won't be long before the container shatters completely." He could only hold his head in despair. The truth Isaac had been avoiding had finally caught up. The mana in his body erupted violently like an explosion and collided with external mana, causing a horrific mana surge. He had to endure terrible pain. Many people had died or were injured. When he calmed down, he saw them dead from the sudden explosion. Not only the people in the mansion, but even his younger brother had lost an arm. Isaac made the decision himself. "Lock me away." Tears streamed down his cheek. Loneliness enveloped him, in a place no one could reach. From then on, Isaac stayed in the basement, where no one could be harmed. While eating, he told himself, "I was only 15 then, right?" Suddenly, a heavy, hacking cough sounded in his ears. Isaac turned back anxiously. Bright red blood was visible on Lucas's hands. Isaac's face turned pale immediately. He was coughing up blood. That was one of the symptoms of mana poisoning, because he had stayed by his side for too long. Isaac instinctively clenched his fingers. He hurried forward to support Lucas. "Since you stayed with me, even though you didn't have to, you must rest for at least a month." Lucas couldn't help but laugh. "If I'm not here, who will serve you? Young master, besides me, you don't have any other friends, do you?" Isaac scolded him. "Do you want me to kick you out for being impudent?" Lucas left obediently. "Don't worry, don't you understand me by now?" He patted his chest proudly. "Even though you've caused dozens of mana explosions, I haven't lost a single hair. You won't find anyone like me." Isaac stood still, filled with anxiety. Just one mistake could cause him to lose everything. He turned away coldly. "Now get out. I'm going to take my medicine. Don't bother me." "Yes, young master." Lucas closed the door respectfully. "Serving you is my honor." The sign changed. Suddenly, Isaac woke up. "Congratulations, young Master Isaac." He was dressed in formal attire in the center. Everyone fell to the ground in pain. A familiar voice rang out, "You finally arrived." Isaac looked back in a panic. "Welcome back." Lucas stood alone in the corner of the room. his blood-covered face smiling. "Long time no see, young master." Isaac woke up from the nightmare, cold sweat pouring down like a stream. He was alone in the basement again. Lucas was dead. After coughing up blood and leaving, he didn't return for over a year. Isaac had a hard time hearing the news of his death from his father. On that day, another mana eruption occurred. He locked his door tight. Perhaps he had skipped meals many times. Isaac was drowning in extreme regret. He should have kept his distance. He kept blaming himself. He shouldn't have gotten attached. He should have been colder. Isaac couldn't stop regretting. If he could have done that, then everything. A few more years passed, and he didn't even care to eat. Yet he was still alive, so from now on, he had to move forward. The teenager from back then had become middle-aged, but his appearance was like an old man. In the more than 30 years he had lived underground, Isaac poured his entire being into researching magic to overcome this special constitution. And now books had nothing left to teach him. Only intuition and realization remained. Isaac muttered as if self-hypnotizing. "You, the one who started the journey. You, the one who was lonely until the end. Can you stand alone before an infinite, desolate world where only mana and yourself exist? You must awaken yourself." Years passed, and he finally found a clue to overcome his condition. The quality of the meals seemed to be declining. Isaac was a bit puzzled. What's going on with the family? He should remove the moldy layer before eating. Research documents continued to be sent, but when he sat back at the table, his eyes looked up at the calendar on the wall. Isaac was stunned for a moment. Am I already 71 years old? Right at that moment, footsteps sounded outside. Then a very familiar sound echoed, his brother. Jonas called out, "It's me, Jonas. Are you sleeping?" Isaac was incredulous. He hurried to the door. "Jonas, why did you come here?" He was silent for a moment. Jonas spoke tentatively, "Can I come in?" Isaac kept his distance. "Just stay there and talk." The two were separated by a door. "Have you been well lately?" Jonas hesitated. "It's a long story." Jonas suddenly revealed, "Do you know what? Today is Father's death anniversary." He asked blankly, "Father, how did he pass away?" Jonas spoke cautiously. "It's a long story. Do you want to hear it?" Isaac von Goethe replied, "If you don't mind." Jonas rewound into the past. Then it has to start from 30 years ago. Back then, there was a war of succession between the first prince and the second prince. The two talked for a long time. It had been a long time since he had spoken to anyone else. Isaac couldn't hide the joy in his eyes, feeling like he had returned to his childhood. He sincerely praised, "I must admit one thing, you tell a story very well. I lost track of time without even knowing it." Jonas burst into a hearty laugh. "Really? If I had known, I would have wandered the world and lived like a poet." He suddenly mentioned, "It's just that with one arm, it probably wasn't easy." Isaac was startled, feeling guilty. "I'm sorry, I'm truly sorry." Jonas then said that everyone loved him very much. He poured out his heart. "What a pity. For the last time, I wanted to see your face, brother." Isaac was immediately horrified. The last time. Jonas continued to explain. While the war was happening, a gate had opened. Monsters from a strange, unknown world. The extremist faction of the new religion. The crimes they committed. Isaac hurried to turn back and ask if his younger brother was okay. However, Jonas's consciousness seemed to have become hazy. He still muttered, "In this place, now at least you live comfortably, if only it had been a bit sooner." At the same time, Isaac saw red blood starting to leak from the door crack. Without thinking much, he hurriedly opened the door, and was horrified to witness Jonas collapsed in a pool of blood. It seemed he had been severely wounded before coming here. Even in a critical condition, Jonas still gritted his teeth and praised softly, "That's impressive. I managed to tell such a long period of time. Let's go, we can't just lie here forever." Isaac supported his younger brother. Both started slowly moving outside. While walking, Isaac's tears didn't stop flowing. "Oh my, why are you so light? How long have you been starving yourself?" When they approached the door, a blinding light suddenly shone directly inside. Isaac took a deep, heavy breath, then determinedly hugged his brother tightly and headed out. Outside was a scene of miserable ruin, as if it had just gone through a fierce battle. In the center of the main room was the corpse of a giant monster. However, Isaac didn't care about such things. He reached out, touched a falling snowflake, and muttered, "It's snowing, Jonas. The winter ground is frozen. I can't bury you right now. I'll try to wait until spring to bury you in the family graveyard. And then I will also rest." Time slowly passed. Trees began to bud. A butterfly landed on the sword hill. Isaac had finished burying his relative. He clenched a stone tightly. Isaac reached his hand up gently, and a raging fire appeared. He smiled with relief. "Do you see, Jonas?" Isaac von Goethe was deeply moved. "Even if it's late, I finally did it." The stone in his hand shattered. "After years of research, I have overcome this constitution." Isaac collapsed wearily. Now I can also rest right. For all these years, he had always tormented himself. Can I be forgiven even a little bit? If I had been a little faster, if I hadn't wasted so much time in despair, would everything have changed? Isaac breathed his last breath with his family. Time passed and suddenly someone called out anxiously, "Young master, did you have a nightmare?" He vaguely recognized this voice. No, Han passed away a long time ago. Blinding light from the window shone in. Isaac jolted awake. He had become much younger. Han pulled the curtains and asked, "You are drenched in cold sweat and your face is pale." He limped closer. "Didn't you sleep well?" Isaac looked around suspiciously. "Am I dreaming? Or is this a flash of light before death?" Isaac walked slowly toward the window. There he heard the shouting of the servants. "Jonas, it's dangerous. Get down right now." The response was Jonas's youthful voice. "It's okay." On a nearby branch, young Jonas spotted Isaac watching him and waved happily. "Brother." Seeing that sight, Isaac's face remained blank, not understanding what was happening. And his younger brother Jonas was still happily swinging on the tree branch. Isaac could only manage a sheepish, awkward smile in return. At this moment, everything finally clicked into place. This wasn't a dream. He had actually returned to the past. "Oh, traveler at the start of your journey, are you lonely enough to stand before the infinite? The world consists only of mana and you. You must awaken to your true self. Let go of your thoughts and discard those antiquated perspectives. Break free from the shackles of the past and return to your authentic self." Ceramic shards were scattered all across the room. The maids complained incessantly. "What a mess this room is. The young master is truly ungrateful and ill-tempered. When the master returns tomorrow, I'm quitting." They gossiped freely, perhaps assuming that his illness had made him increasingly sensitive. Han was furious and about to rush forward. "What are they saying? I'm going to teach them a lesson." Isaac held him back. "That's enough, Han." He turned his head away in shame. "They're not wrong." Isaac couldn't bear it either. "You shouldn't come to visit me anymore. Han, you were hurt just because you were near me today." He felt heartbroken. Han knelt before him. "Not at all, young master." He insisted on comforting him. "I still care for you. You're just going through a difficult time right now." Han firmly believed it would pass, and that everything wouldn't be a big deal then. He offered a reassuring smile. "Isn't that just how life is?" Just like that, Han, the man who once wore such a radiant smile, eventually lost his life during a minor explosion caused by none other than me. Those who cared about me died because of this heart. Isaac blamed himself. "No, it was me who killed them." Outside, Jonas was still calling out, "Big brother, come play with me." Lyra added anxiously, "Please come down." Isaac hardened his resolve. If this was reality, he gripped his hands tight. He knew what he had to do. He called out to Han. Han quickly responded, "Yes, young master." He ordered coldly, "Get out." Isaac shouted in anger, "Get out of my sight." Han was momentarily stunned. Then he complied, "As you wish." He was determined. This was for the best. Being near him only brought danger. Han hesitated for a moment, as if he could see right through Isaac. "Please don't try to shoulder everything alone." Han gently urged, "Sometimes you can trust us too." I don't recall him ever saying those words, or am I just dreaming because I wanted to hear them? He swung his hand and slapped his own face. Isaac was stunned into silence. That hurt. Is this really reality? Then how did I die before? He looked outside again. Isaac resolved that whether it was a dream or reality didn't matter. He had to stop himself from letting out another mana explosion. In the past, there was someone else born with a peculiar physique named Zeke von Gogh. He reached a realm no other human could. He was a 10th Circle Archmage and my many times great ancestor. After investigating underground, I found the records he left behind, which helped me better understand how to utilize this unique physique. After years of meticulous research, I found a way to overcome it. Isaac perfected it quickly. This was the first step. Rune stones, the ultimate crystallization of my discoveries, carved into mana stones, then burned and fused to form them. He marveled to himself. His hands had once trembled with old age, but now it was so easy. It was good to be young again. To stop the side effects of his unique physique, the mana explosions, the mana container had to withstand the chaotic flow inside. But my mana flows too fast and too violently for the container to handle. An ordinary person would die the moment it shattered, but strangely, my container would regenerate as if it had never been destroyed. Because of that, it could explode 10 or 20 times. Isaac couldn't help but think that he truly was a walking catastrophe. These rune stones helped safely replace the mana circuits by applying constant pressure to the damaged area. This formed new pathways, allowing the surges of wild mana to be dispersed. He pondered deeply, though the success rate was extremely low. Before I died, I had only succeeded once. Isaac remembered it vividly. That small flame was the proof. He started tensely, wondering if he would succeed this time. A fierce flame erupted, but it was bigger than he expected. Isaac was incredibly surprised and quite happy. This power, Isaac's heart ached. The circuits reacted, and a stream of mana flowed throughout his body. Isaac was bewildered. The stone in his hand lit up. A small flame flickered from it. It grew larger and more intense. He realized joyfully, I knew it, the circuits have increased to 3. Isaac was stunned for a moment. Each circuit had its own function and route, and now he could cast 3 spells simultaneously. It worked. He calmed himself down. No, this wasn't my goal. My goal is to prevent any more mana explosions. Therefore, 3 circuits are not enough. I must use magic more frequently to expand the circuits and reduce the burden on the mana container. Until I achieve that, I won't let anyone be by my side. Time passed quickly, and it was already evening. Han arrived with a bright smile. It's time for dinner, young master. He acted as if nothing had happened, offering a cold meat sandwich. Isaac didn't know what to say. I already told you to get out. Han ignored him. You've been eating so little lately. Please have a bite. He was completely helpless. The man wouldn't listen to a word he said. Isaac couldn't understand it, and what was with this gentle, sweet tone? He was incredibly persistent. I'll leave as soon as you take a bite. Hurry up. He tried to probe. Han, how old am I? Han replied, You're 12 years old this year, sir. Isaac had to take a bite. He supposed he had to act like a normal child his age. He took a bite. Isaac realized immediately that the bread must have been made by his nanny. It had been a long time since he tasted this flavor. He devoured his dinner. Isaac suddenly remembered, where's the nanny? I haven't seen her today. Han explained, yes, her son is suffering from pneumonia. He hesitated, putting his spoon down, so she has returned home then. He noted coldly, a nanny leaving her post for her child. In any other family, she wouldn't be allowed to keep working. This truly is a benevolent family. Han's eyes widened in surprise. The fire in the room crackled. Isaac contemplated. He clenched his fists involuntarily. Isaac decided to ask, is Hinder the only one with pneumonia? He sighed in relief. Han said no. All the children in the village had fallen ill. He nodded. I understand. I remember now. An epidemic broke out at this time, and the Black Goose Village was the source. The nanny lost her son in this incident and lived the rest of her life in inconsolable grief. In her final moments, Lyra said, It's good, young master. She had been gentle to the very end, even though I was the one leaving this time. Isaac thought to himself, I don't want her to have to go through that again. He propped his chin on his hand, pondering. The cause of the pneumonia remained a mystery. His dinner was temporarily abandoned. Isaac changed his line of thought. Han. He jumped up. Have any monsters been exterminated in that area recently? Late one night, a large deer was wandering through the forest. Suddenly it startled, sensing danger. A fireball unexpectedly attacked the deer. It scrambled away in panic. Isaac slowly approached. He looked disappointed. I thought it was a wolf. Isaac continued deep into the forest. He was heading straight for the Black Goose Village. Not long ago, Han was quite surprised by Isaac's question. A monster hunted in Black Goose Village. He tried to recall. I didn't get a clear look at it myself, but people from the Magic Tower came to buy its carcass for research materials. Han hadn't paid much attention at the time. I did take a quick glance, though. He described it clearly. It looked just like a giant spider covered in silver fur. He quickly narrowed down the target. If Han's description was accurate, the monster was definitely, Isaac confirmed, a winter spider. Winter spiders weren't particularly strong monsters, but they often formed large swarms due to their astonishing reproductive rate. The real problem lay in the amount of mana these creatures possessed. If one comes into contact with high-density mana, the body suffers from mana poisoning, which slowly causes the victim to suffocate. Back in reality, he was collecting a large amount of herbs. Isaac worked tirelessly. The children in Black Goose Village must have been poisoned by the mana emitted by the winter spider. His bag was soon full. Isaac had found the cause. But in this era, knowledge of mana poisoning was very limited. That's why they mistook the illness for pneumonia. He looked at his basket. That should be enough herbs. Giving this to the children would help soothe their symptom. Isaac knew how to deal with this, but the treatment was only temporary. To prevent a recurrence, the swarm of monsters had to be completely wiped out. I could ask my parents for help, but father is often stationed at the border fortress, and mother is busy traveling the continent to find a cure for my unique physique. He thought to himself, if I just sit and wait for them, Hinder's life will be in critical danger once again. Isaac quickly arrived at the village. He headed straight for the nanny's house. Lyra was sitting anxiously by the sickbed. She started at the noise. Lyra opened the door cautiously. Who's there? She was stunned in surprise. Isaac pulled his hood down. You look exhausted, Nanny. Lyra gasped. Young master. She asked anxiously, why are you here at this hour? And what's with your clothes? Did something happen at the mansion? Lyra carefully wiped the dirt from his face. My goodness, you're covered in mud. Isaac was slightly moved. He went to step inside. You haven't been to work for many days, so I just dropped by to see how you were doing. She startled and blocked him. Wait, you can't come in. Lyra was only afraid Isaac would catch the disease. They say Hinder has pneumonia. What if you catch it? He took out a mask and put it on. Is this okay? She truly didn't dare, but sir. Isaac handed a large bag to Lyra. Don't worry about that. Take this. She asked blankly, what is this? He replied briefly, herbs. Grind them, mix them, boil them twice, let it cool, and have him drink it. Isaac walked straight into the inner room. He stood by the bed to observe. Isaac immediately concluded, these blue-purple spots are definitely mana poisoning. He shook the patient. Hinder, can you hear me? He struggled to open his eyes. Hinder woke up and pleaded, Isaac, no. Young master, please don't fire my mother. Even while coughing, he tried to explain. Mom couldn't come to work regularly because of me. It's all because I'm sick. Isaac immediately reassured him, I won't fire her. He checked Hinder's body temperature. Your mom is the only one who secretly brought barley bread to me, after all. Time flew to the next morning, and he was led by the doctor. This was the abandoned mine he had been looking for. Isaac peered inside. Are you sure this is a limestone cave? It's really dark in here. The man insisted firmly. Yes, I'm certain. He offered a gold coin as payment. Thanks, this is far enough. I'll handle the rest from here. Ethan looked back and warned, be careful. People have gone missing in this area before. Isaac replied while walking, thanks for the warning. He had already ruled out other areas. Winter spiders usually prefer limestone caves. Since this was the only limestone cave in the region, it was highly likely to be their nest. Isaac had prepared in advance. Before moving in, lights flickered around him. Need to do a little prep work first. Last time, thanks to opening new channels in my mana system, I was able to cast 3 types of magic simultaneously. With this ability, the output power could rival second-tier magic. However, everything has its limits. If I overexert myself, my mana reservoir could shatter. Isaac calculated very carefully. Since I don't know how many winter spiders are inside, I can't just cast magic willy-nilly. That's why I need this. The nightshade plant. Normally, its fruit is diluted to be used as an anesthetic or sedative. It looks exactly like what is described in books, but for winter spiders, it's a lethal poison. He decisively pulled them up. It's ridiculous that they live in the same environment as their own fatal weakness. How ironic. Time flew until noon. Isaac had a bag full of poison. His hands were aching. I should have at least brought gloves. The toxicity is really strong. Isaac felt ready. All right, that's enough preparation. I made plenty of rune stones back at the mansion, so it's time to get going. He moved deeper inside, the cave getting darker by the minute. Isaac stopped before a sheer drop. Strong wind blowing up to where he stood. Losing my life in a place like this would be a meaningless death. Isaac looked around, searching. It seems to be right below here, but how do I get down? He happened to spot a rope ladder, which looked like it was still in good enough condition to use. Isaac felt a bit tense, but he didn't hesitate for long. Isaac followed the ladder down, landing safely on the floor below. Isaac was tired to the point his limbs were trembling. He furrowed his brow tightly. Looks like I found the right place. Before Isaac's eyes, the area was piled high with dry bone. The corpses stacked on the floor, looking as if all their bodily fluids had been drained away. And there was a human collarbone. Could these be the missing people the hunter mentioned? A screeching noise echoed close to him. Isaac jumped in surprise, the pressure growing closer by the second. He cautiously prepared for a confrontation, the magic power in his hand intensifying. He was ready to fight. Isaac fired a fireball at the winter spiders, successfully creating a safe zone. These creatures are terrified of fire, so this would help drive them away for a moment. Isaac unloaded his gear. I need to be ready before they surround me. He covered his nose and mouth tightly. Isaac took out the poison, focusing with all his might. Isaac fixed his eyes on his target. First, the herbs. He decisively set fire to the bag of poison. A faint poisonous scent spreading through the air. The winter spiders seemed to slow down. This was Isaac's chance. All right, let the hunt begin. Back to some time in his previous life. Inside a study room, Isaac was sitting at his desk working. Suddenly, a loud voice rang out. What on earth did you do to let things get this bad? He paused and walked over to the window to look down. Below, 3 people were arguing. Watch your tongue. You are standing before a noble lord. In this place, who doesn't know about that? Liam shouted angrily. Right now, I am questioning the master of this land about why you failed to protect your own people. Why did you abandon the Black Crow village like that? Why? The other person suddenly roared, "Shut your mouth." He turned around and walked to his seat. So noisy. Should I tell them to use boards to seal up those windows? Or should I just move down to the basement? It's quiet down there and no one walks by. That way, I can focus better on researching my own special constitution. By the way, I should cover the walls with Miriam, as that mineral has high magic resistance. It will be very helpful when dealing with mana explosions. Isaac looked up and asked, "What do you think, Han?" The room was completely empty, with no one there but him. Isaac stared blankly. He whispered softly, "Oh right, Han has." Isaac bowed his head and diligently wrote on. The scratching sound resumed, and the room became quiet again. His writing speed increased. Isaac's eyes widened as he looked down. The more he wrote, the more intense he became. His eyes wide open in a terrifying manner. The room was filled only with the sound of his pen. At this moment in a cave, Isaac sat silently in contemplation. He looked up and wondered to himself, why do I keep dwelling on these old memories? The ice poison seemed to be working quite well on the winter spider. I can't feed those monsters the poison directly. But if I burn it and let the smoke spread like this, their bodies will gradually become paralyzed until they suffocate and die. Of course, I'm not safe from that smoke myself. That's why I have to wrap a wet handkerchief around my face as a primary filter, then use the mana inside my body to purify the rest. At the same time, I'm creating a small fireball and using phase-shifting magic to stay alert. Purification, fire magic, and phase shifting, 3 types of magic cast simultaneously through 3 mana circuits, also known as multi-circuit cast. Thanks to that, I was able to buy time until the spiders weakened. Isaac pointed a finger forward. Goodbye. A massive explosion followed. He strolled casually through the sea of fire. Suddenly, Isaac sensed something. He pondered. It seems they are all fleeing in the same direction. Isaac's eyes lit up. Looks like there's a water source over there. He picked up his pace. Isaac's clothes suddenly caught fire, and he hurriedly took them off. These things are very flammable, but at this rate, I'll die of smoke inhalation. Plus, it's way too hot. Isaac threw his coat to the ground. Must end this quickly. By evening, the cave became cold. He walked along the water flow. Isaac shivered, hugging himself. It's freezing in here. I shouldn't have thrown my coat away. I didn't expect the temperature to drop low enough to freeze. He suddenly looked up. Wait. Above Isaac was a nest of eggs. Are they all eggs? If it laid this many, could it be? Suddenly a sound rang out, and he jumped at the noise. Isaac hurriedly turned to look, his eyes wide in shock. The eggs were slowly falling. He regained his composure and raised his hand. Isaac blasted fire forward. The flapping sound of flames echoed. He looked bewildered at the scene. A drop of sweat rolled down Isaac's cheek. A giant spider suddenly appeared behind his back. Isaac sensed it immediately. Just as it lunged, he sprinted away. Isaac dashed forward to dodge. He turned to look back. Damn it, why are my instincts never wrong? Isaac froze when he saw it was the winter spider queen, completely different from the other. It is a monster species capable of resisting fire and carrying the breath of frost. That is why they are called that, winter spider. The spider lunged rapidly. He hurriedly stood up to attack. A ball of fire slammed into its leg. Isaac gritted his teeth, thinking, as expected, a few fireballs aren't enough to set it ablaze like the other. The only consolation was that its movements weren't very agile. Suddenly, a wave of pain struck him. My body is reaching its limit. For a 12-year-old body with no real combat experience, it was only natural to end up like this after staying up all night and using magic all day. While Isaac was contemplating, the spider had already closed in. He struggled to lift his head. Isaac's eyes narrowed slightly. Images from the past surfaced. Oh, the barley bread Han brought is really delicious. In this harsh, dry northern region, where even wheat can't grow, the reason I could eat soft white bread was all thanks to my nan. Because I was a picky eater and hated black bread, she went out of her way to go to a distant city every week to buy the finest wheat. Isaac suddenly gave a smirk. When I get back, I have to ask her to make a ton of it. He pulled out his shovel. Even if it's a queen spider, it's ultimately just an arthropod. Isaac also unstrapped his backpack. The backpack swung in his hand and shattered with a crack. The spider's eyes turned blood red. He gripped the shovel and ran straight at it. His expression turned serious. The shovel plunged straight into the spider's eye, and a stream of blue blood spurted out. Its painful scream echoed. Isaac gritted his teeth and pulled back. He slid under the spider's belly, grabbing hold of its leg with one hand. A loud noise rang out, and both of them fell. Isaac scraped against the floor, holding on for dear life. I still lack the precision to shoot them, and I don't have enough strength left to keep casting fireballs. Even if I hit it, I can't deliver a fatal blow to a fire-resistant creature. In that case, I have no choice but to give up long-range attacks. This is completely different from the fireballs before. Initialize, compress, and then. A loud scream echoed in his head. Condense it a little more. Isaac furrowed his brow and shouted in anger. He swung his hand and punched it hard. Die. A large patch of the spider's back froze over. He immediately sensed it lunging. A scream of agony filled the cave. It rolled back and forth on the floor. Isaac reached out to take it out. I have to pull my hand out now, but with it shaking so violently, it was impossible to do. His hand was drenched in blood. Isaac let out a sigh of relief, got it out. A moment later, both lay on the ground, the spider's body still burning. A stone fell out from inside it. The stone looked just like a jewel. He slowly opened his eyes. Where am I? Noisy arguing broke out. Did you report that the young master snuck out of the mansion yet? Was that voice the nanny? I wouldn't dare say a word. If that gets out, everything will be in chaos immediately. Is that Han? Han said, confused. But do you really know nothing? Isn't it said the young master went all the way to that abandoned mine? Lyra covered her face with one hand. I really don't know. A local hunter guided him there, but he's been busy hunting ever since, so I'm not sure about the specific situation. Right, I managed to take down the winter spider queen, and then passed out after hitting my head on the ground. Luckily, I woke up soon after, and managed to crawl out of the ruined mine to make it back to the village. Afterward, I ran into Han, who was lurking near the village entrance. He saw me collapse, panicked, and passed out right then and there. Isaac slowly opened his eyes. Indeed, thanks to following the young master's instructions exactly, little Hinder had fully recovered. Han offered a gentle smile. That's just the young master's true nature. Truly, he has been a bit more sensitive since the mono explosion, but how could that kind heart of his ever change? Hearing this, he felt embarrassed. Isaac sat up abruptly, and Han looked over quickly. Young master, are you awake? He asked in his voice. How long have I been asleep? Han replied. You've been asleep for about half a day. How are you feeling? I'm fine, still well within my limits. She scolded him angrily. What do you mean, within limits? Why did you go to such a dangerous place all by yourself? Isaac was silent for a moment before saying, I just accidentally tripped while picking some herbs nearby. Even if I told them a 12-year-old killed a monster, they'd just think I was delirious. It's better to just make up some excuse. Anyway, how is Hinder doing? Lyra sighed. Thanks to the herbs you gave, he's much better. The same goes for the other children in the village. He tilted his head with a faint look of relief. It's best to keep the mana poisoning a secret. If the higher-ups find out, the Council of Scholars will interfere immediately. Are all the winter spiders dead? Who could have done such a thing? It would be quite troublesome if the spider carcasses in the mine were discovered. She asked in surprise, but how do you know so much about those herbs? Even the doctor sent by the Lord didn't have a clue. Isaac immediately looked away. I just happened to read about it in some books. Don't mention that anymore, it's time to go, Han. He was confused. Right now, it's snowing quite heavily outside. He turned to leave the bed. If it gets out that I snuck out of the mansion, your fate won't be very pleasant either, will it? Lyra brought a basket of fruit to Isaac. Please take these as well. The villagers asked me to give them to you to express their gratitude. He picked up one and looked at it. Nanny, take another week off. Shouldn't you be at ease before coming back to work, once Hinder has fully recovered? She asked awkwardly. Would that really be all right? The head butler certainly won't let it slide. Isaac spoke suddenly in a way that made it hard to understand. Who said I was only giving you time off? He held up an apple and ordered, use these to make jam. She asked again, make apple jam. Isaac took a bite and replied, yes, to eat with barley bread the day you return to work. Lyra seemed a bit dazed, then she smiled, and tears welled up in the corners of her eyes. Lyra added softly, would it be all right if I made apple pie as well? He offered a praising smile. That sounds good. In the morning, the sky was clear with mild sunshine. At a large mansion, Isaac ran while catching his breath. A week had passed, and his speed was incredibly fast. During that time, his mana circuits had also undergone a transformation. The 3 mana circulation cycles had increased by 1, bringing the total to 4. Thanks to that, the mana circuits became significantly more stable, and the number of spells he could cast simultaneously also increased to 4 layers. Fighting the winter spiders and pushing himself to the limit likely helped a great deal. The hard, daily jogging sessions certainly played a significant role as well. Using magic requires thorough calculation as well as sharp intuition, a process that drains a lot of mental energy. When the body is exhausted, the mind will collapse as well, and a clear spirit needs a resilient physical foundation. The reason I reached my limit so quickly at that abandoned mine was due to this immature, untrained body. In my previous life, Lucas still frequently trained my physical strength. The image of Lucas smiling appeared, and his face suddenly turned somber. A sudden call echoed, "Young master, Schiller brought Andrian. Today is your scheduled health checkup." He stopped and wiped his sweat. It was the head butler Schiller and the doctor. Andrian placed a hand on his chest and smiled brightly. "Greetings, young master. How are you feeling today?" This was the personal doctor appointed by his father, rumored to be the most renowned physician in the surrounding regions. Yet even he did not fully understand his condition. Andrian moved forward to observe. "It seems there are no serious issues today. In fact, you look healthier than ever. In that case, I will start adjusting your prescription." Isaac thought indifferently. Is he just going to jump to conclusions like that? He opened his own bag, which contained 6 vials. "This is a medicinal herb called Panacea. It helps stabilize the flow of mana." Isaac picked up a vial to look at it. Panacea. Father really went to the trouble of finding a high-class item for me. In common parlance, panacea is understood as a cure-all. For some, it is used as a stimulant and an endurance enhancer for soldiers. Although this medicine is known for stabilizing mana flow for smoother circulation, that is actually a misconception that arose during the translation of ancient text. Its true effect is to stimulate mana flow. In other words, it is nothing short of poison to someone who has lost control of their mana like me. However, given the current situation, it will serve as a suitable catalyst. If used well, it will help me increase my mana circulation cycles. Then I look forward to seeing you next month. All right, you've worked hard. After finishing the conversation, Andrian left. He turned around and saw Schiller watching him. Isaac asked, "Is there something you want to say?" Schiller replied, "You seem quite calm today. Isn't it normal for you to throw a tantrum when being examined? That is also why all the doctors in the affiliated territory refuse to be your personal physician." He laughed upon hearing the question. "Is that so? Should I have thrown a fit?" Schiller remained silent for a moment, then moved his lips. The next statement stunned him. "I heard you cured the pneumonia for the children in Black Goose Village." Isaac asked calmly, "You know about that as well?" Schiller replied straightforwardly, "I just heard it from Han." He thought to himself, "So you interrogated Han?" His face turned angry. If this were to become public, the advisory council certainly wouldn't let it go. "I will let it slide this time." He bowed low and spoke softly. "But from now on, I hope you will learn to exercise more self-restraint." Schiller's gaze was cold as he looked at him. For a very long time, I was never able to get close to Schiller. He was always a dry, rigid head butler, a cold old man who always kept his distance from everyone. Schiller suddenly picked up Isaac's suitcase. "If you truly cannot help yourself," he said, taking it, "then at least discuss it with me first." He was also surprised by that sight. According to what Jonas told him just before passing away, Schiller, who had served the von Goethe family since the time of the previous master, stuck to his position until the von Goethe house fell. And then he sacrificed his own life. He actually always cared deeply for this family. Isaac nodded and smiled. "I understand. Thank you, Schiller." He also just remained silent, saying nothing. Schiller thought for a moment and asked, "By the way, you've been jogging every day lately. Is there a particular reason for that?" He raised his face to glance at him. Throughout history, all mages who reached the 5th level or higher train their bodies strictly. If it is a body used to conduct mana, shouldn't it have a commensurate physical foundation? Schiller's eyes widened in surprise. In the evening, inside a room, there was a report that the young master had cured the pneumonia for the children in Black Goose Village. The verification process is complete. With this specific physical condition, it will be difficult for the young master to use magic in the future. However, I venture to suggest that the path of becoming a scholar or an alchemist might be suitable for him. With this, the Lord must also be somewhat relieved of his worry. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." A maid walked in. "Excuse me, sir." Schiller looked up. "Rosa, is it you again?" She replied with a hint of fear. "Please forgive me, head butler. The maids keep disappearing and never return. I don't know about Clara's case, but as for Annette, she is a very hardworking girl who has never thought about taking a day off in the past 3 years. Rosa's eyes reddened. I am certain that something unfortunate has happened to her. In some corner, a group of servants stood talking among themselves. Isn't this strange? In just 2 short months, 3 maids have gone missing. You think so? The Von Goth region was never an easy place to live anyway. Bill said smugly, because it's way up in the north, the weather is extremely harsh. Plus, robbers and monsters are constantly causing trouble. Lily pointed at him. So you mean you're planning to pack up and run away too? Hey, I'm just making a hypothesis. She bowed her head slightly, but at the very least, Annette is not the type of person to suddenly vanish without a word of farewell. How hard did she have to work to earn money for her father's medicine? Bill smirked, refuting. Maybe she got tired of the scene of having to serve that sick father of hers. Who knows, maybe she ran off with some lover. Rosa and Lily were furious upon hearing this. Watch your mouth. Bill spread his arms and said calmly, just kidding. Actually, I have my own theory. If you don't care, just listen. Here. Bill suddenly acted spooky. In my opinion, it's like this. A bold thought appeared in his head. Could it be dark magic? The two girls were dazed. Dark magic, he immediately said. What else? Anyway, this is the mansion of a mage family, right? Not to mention the young master's condition hasn't been very promising lately. If you were the master of this house, would you be willing to use magic at any cost? Lily blurted out, you mean those missing girls were taken to be used as human sacrifices? Rosa screamed, what the hell are you babbling about, Bill? If you dare to weave such monstrous rumors, I won't let it go. He continued, and if you don't let it go, what are you going to do? Me? Maybe I'm right. Rosa was furious. The family master is not that kind of person. He was even generous enough to take in a sinner like you. Bill was still stubborn. What? You go on, and now you're starting to yell again. Behind his back, a voice suddenly made him jump. This story actually sounds quite interesting. Isaac crossed his arms and looked at Bill. Why don't you tell me in more detail? He said with a bit of fear. It started 2 months ago. Bill's gaze darted elsewhere. First, the maid Hilda suddenly vanished. Then a few weeks later, it was Clara's turn, with no trace to be found. Finally, this weekend, Annette went to mass and disappeared without returning. The room suddenly went silent. He asked coldly, do you know the reason why? Bill thought for a moment before speaking. Why does a child possess such a terrifying gaze? Sir, I'm not very sure about that. Isaac immediately said, just tell the truth. I promise I won't blame you for this. He asked in surprise, young master, are you serious? My word is always true. Bill silently bowed his head. Isaac asked abruptly, confusing him, do you think I am the cause of this? Isn't that already painfully obvious? Look at Han, he is your closest servant, yet he is always covered in wounds and bruises. That guy is always moaning in pain. I'm not sure. Those who cannot have a peaceful death. The probability is high that it's him. I shouldn't have opened my mouth. Isaac called out in a dark voice, Bill. He begged fearfully, please, young master, spare my life. I haven't even had a chance to get married or have a single child. The priest once said this life was given by God. He looked at Bill calmly. You don't want to die, do you? Isaac offered his hand. Then serve me to make up for your mistake. He stopped begging. Night fell, the wind rustled, and a green flame floated by. Isaac sat on the bed looking up at the sky. Rosa, Annette. Images of the two girls appeared in the fire. He said with an indifferent expression, right, those are their names. Ever since Han and my nanny passed away, they were the only maids who volunteered to stay and serve me. The vial fell to the ground and shattered, and a small drop of blood dripped down. Isaac swung his hand to order. Both of you get out. I want to be alone in peace. The two maids were terrified. But young master, what about your hand? He immediately snapped. Didn't you hear me tell you to get out? These medicines are useless anyway. Don't ever bring them here again. Rosa, despite her fear, tried to say, but young master, please don't give up hope so soon. I'm sure everything will be fine. His face darkened, his voice icy. Hope, you say? How could you ever understand the feeling of having to take the life of the person you love most with your own hands? Isaac's hand clenched tight. Can you even imagine that kind of pain? She looked at him in confusion. Young master. Annette stepped forward and said, I understand. I myself have caused a friend to lose their life at these very hands. Hearing this, he lowered his voice. Your friend. Rosa glanced down. Annette continued. If only I had turned back to look at Clara even once back then. If I had reached out my hand in time, perhaps I could have saved her. After speaking, Annette walked over to Isaac. She looked down at him. I understand your situation is incredibly unique, but in this world, anyone can end up doing things against their own will. Isaac frowned at Annette. She kept her eyes on him as she continued, at least once in a lifetime. It can happen to anyone. At that moment, Annette's own pessimism brought me a strange sense of comfort. Back in the present, I really should have asked her more about this when I had the chance. Suddenly, a knock sounded at the door, and a voice called out from outside. "Excuse me, young master, it's Bill." Sitting on the bed, he asked, "Did you find any trace of those maids yet?" He quickly replied, "Yes, I did. It didn't take me much time to find them at all. I went around asking the beggars near the main roads, and their stories all matched up perfect." Isaac finished listening and asked, "So, what was the result?" Bill clearly explained, "Turns out it was all the work of human traffickers. They used sweet talk to promise people passage to the prosperous South, then secretly sold them off." He was puzzled hearing this. If they wanted to go south, they could have gone on their own. Why was it necessary to go through brokers? He raised his hand with a smirk. "Young master, you still don't fully understand how the world works. You've got to worry about transportation for a long, grueling journey south, hiring mercenaries to protect you from bandits along the way, and securing legal papers to establish your status once you arrive. You really think a group of weak, defenseless women could handle all that by themselves?" Isaac rested his chin on his hand and thought, "I see, that makes sense." Bill sighed to himself. Kids will always be kids. This brat doesn't know a thing about the real world. An idea suddenly popped into Bill's head. Wait a minute, could this be? He suddenly spoke up. "I had to pay a pretty penny to get those beggars to spill the beans. That's why I burned through all the travel money you gave me. Young master, please spare me a little more." He asked back, incredulous, "All 20 silver coins. That's equivalent to half a year's salary." Bill laughed heartily in response, making Isaac think to himself, "Everyone's just too paranoid." He said, "That small amount of money isn't an issue. What I need is to find them as quickly as possible." Bill beamed at the answer. "Oh my, young master, you really are generous. Is there anything else you need me to do?" Isaac replied, "Yes, there is. I'll make sure you are handsomely rewarded for this job. Do you want to give it a try?" Bill clenched his fist in excitement. "Of course I do." He thought to himself that he'd hooked a fat fish this time. Sure enough, all you need in this life is a smooth tongue to live well. If I can lead this kid by the nose, I'll be making bank from here on out. This is a real golden goose that just showed itself. The only drawback is that this brat is like a ticking time bomb. But hey, no risk, no reward, right? He was overjoyed as he said to him, "I can lead you to that broker right away." A laughter grew louder and louder in Bill's head. That's life, gotta take big risks for big gains. Then he stood behind the iron bars, looking lost. The inside was full of skulls and dust, and he was only wearing his underwear. Bill hugged the iron bars and screamed, "How did things end up like this?" Isaac stood in the corner watching him. "Why do I have to be in this hellhole?" He held the stone in his hand and smirked. In the dungeon, there was a small drainage ditch in the middle. The hand clutching the iron frame trembled. Bill gritted his teeth in fury. Damn it, how did it come to this? He recalled what happened before, when everything was still fine. When I snuck the young master out of the mansion to Burn City. Meeting the broker who took the maids was easy. He claimed he was a noble heading south. However, the broker's expression suddenly turned dark. But his eyes swept over Isaac's fine, high-quality clothing. And then he looked at that beautiful, clean face. The broker's face broke into a devious smile. "I understand why the young master is such an easy target for traffickers. He does have a nice face, after all." Bill thought of his own stripped body, left only in his underwear. But why did I end up like this? He grimaced and turned back. What's more, Isaac doesn't even look like he's been harmed at all. Meaning they didn't even bother touching a hair on his head because he's high-quality goods. And unlike in the books, he's focused on his own business. Do I need to condense the mana a little more? Bill was absolutely livid, while I was stripped down to nothing but my underwear. Unable to take it anymore, he shouted, "So what do we do now? I've made it all the way here. You must have some sort of plan, right? Don't you?" Bill demanded urgently, "Stop playing with that rock and say something." Isaac calmly reminded him, "Where did you lose your manners?" But he didn't care anymore. "Can you really afford to worry about manners when you're in my position? We're about to die." Isaac let out a sigh. "I'm going to find Annette and the others." Bill nodded. "Of course you must. If you can even find a way out of these bars." Suddenly, he raised his hand. Behind him, something vibrated with a sound. Right after, the iron frame had a hole carved out of it. Bill's expression immediately turned to astonishment. He started changing his tone, calling softly, "Young master." Bill gave a fawning smile. "You wouldn't leave me here, would you?" Isaac replied indifferently. "Don't you know me by now?" He pleaded. "Come on, don't be like that." His voice drifted outside. This place was like a maze. The two guards grew alert. "What was that sound? Go check it out." Bill was still trying to scare him. "You might get lost and be surrounded by bandits. Who would have thought?" Isaac turned sharply to leave. "You think I can't handle that much? Then I'm off. Good luck." "Wait, young master." he called out in a panic. He stopped in his tracks and looked back. Bill suddenly dropped to his knee. He pleaded desperately, "Please save me. I beg you. I'll do anything, anything." His footsteps halted. Isaac's eyes were filled with contemplation. He thought to himself, "You know what, Bill? I've seen you do this before." Overlapping images from the past appeared. "Please spare my life, young master." Back then he had also begged like this. "I've truly lost my mind. I shouldn't have done that when you were kind enough to take me in, sir." Isaac was stern. "Bill, you were a bandit. When Isaac overwhelmed the bandits, you survived by handing over information about your organization. But this time, you betrayed the Von Goth house. He decided, so I can't trust you anymore." He desperately tried to beg for mercy. "Sir, please spare me just this once." Schiller couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Enough." He questioned him directly. "Do you think the crime of trying to sell Von Goth's secret books to a criminal organization can be taken lightly?" Bill sobbed uncontrollably. "Please, I beg you, I will never betray you again." But in the end, the sword came down to finish. Isaac said, "You would have been quite useful if you weren't so greedy." Isaac's face was emotionless. "I still vaguely remember that day. With a bandit's knowledge of the underground economy, Bill had found the maids using what he knew, and perhaps using up all the silver was a lie too." He thought to himself, "If my memory serves me right, the criminal organization Bill tried to sell the secret books to in my past life is the same one that kidnapped the maid. Now that those bastards have expanded their power through human trafficking, they'll quickly spread through Von Goth like mold and start torturing people. Anything that could be a threat to the family must be destroyed first." At that moment, he took a scroll out from his clothes. "You said you'd do anything, didn't you?" He held it out in front of Bill. "Then I have something you need to do first." In the dim, shadowy room, next to the dining table, a few men were lining up. One was cutting meat on a plate. "Fathers, you're not eating again." He put a piece of meat into his mouth. The men on guard turned pale, covering their mouths and listening. "Please eat something, father. How can I stand watching you wither away like this?" News pointed his fork forward. "Is the person in there?" Opposite him was a skull hanging on a wooden stake. "Wait a little longer. The day I succeed with dark magic, we'll meet again." He sighed with sadness. "You're not answering again. Has your soul faded already?" Suddenly News asked one of the men standing nearby. "Hey, where's my bathwater?" The man stuttered, as the only ones left now were the goods prepared to be sold. Suddenly a large hand struck out. News hoisted him up, and red blood began to gush out. The remaining people heard him say in terror, "Just this one should be enough for my bath, right?" News glanced at them. "I'll be waiting." The underling replied immediately, "I'll have it ready right away." Then he left. The room was now left with only two people and a corpse. One man sighed, clutching his head. "Damn dark magic. What time is it now? In that bastard's food, in his bathwater. Next time, just give him the merchandise we're supposed to sell. Otherwise, we're all going to die." He stood up and flipped the corpse. "Stop complaining and take better care of him." Suddenly, a sound echoed. The two curiously peeked out the door. But the dark hallway was empty. They glanced at each other. Suddenly, the color drained from both their faces. The sound scared them. What was that? Their expressions were no longer calm. Someone quietly swallowed hard. Suddenly, something appeared. News's head, full of hair, rolled to their feet. Right after, News's blood-covered face appeared with bulging eyes. Both were immediately terrified. The fear was so overwhelming, their legs couldn't hold them up. Just then, a figure approached. He held a blood-stained blade. "Spare a drop of water." Everyone's face went pale. "Are you Bill?" He gave a slight smirk. His blood-drenched appearance horrified them. Bill brushed his hair back and repeated, "Give me a cup of water, you bastard." Before that, Isaac held a piece of paper in front of him. "You said you'd do anything, right? Then do this first." Bill was bewildered. "What is this?" He replied, "What else? It's a contract." Isaac quickly summarized. Condition 1. Bill's side must comply with all orders from Party A, Isaac, unconditionally. Condition 2. Bill's side may not disclose any information related to Party A, Isaac. Finally, he emphasized, Condition 3. If Party B violates any of these terms, the penalty is death. Bill's face turned panicked. "Wait, what kind of condition is that?" He pulled a knife from somewhere. "You will sign it in blood. That's the only way the magic takes effect." "Great, this will do the trick." He struggled. "Are you crazy? Why would I sign that?" Suddenly, a voice approached. "Who's there?" Isaac smiled lightly and reminded him, "Come on, I don't have much time." He hit his weak spot. "Don't you want to live?" Outside, heavy footsteps were rushing closer. In front of him was a dangerous contract. The sound of thick soles running on the stone floor became clearer. Bill gritted his teeth and scowled. Suddenly he struck hard, dropping the knife. damn it. Then Bill bit his finger until it bled. He didn't hesitate to press it onto the paper. As soon as he did, the contract suddenly glowed. The corner of his mouth curled into a slight smile. Just then the prison guards arrived. "Who are you guys? How did you get out?" Bill cried out in a panic. "They're here." Immediately after, the three of them were struck right in the face, and the whole lot of them slumped over, collapsing to the ground. He asked in confusion, "Are they dead?" Isaac explained, "They're just knocked out." Bill still couldn't grasp how it happened. Suddenly, the ice stone in his hand caught his eye. He stared at the magic in a daze. The two of them walked to another area outside the prison. Bill held the knife, leading the way. He smiled sheepishly to start a conversation. "That was my first time seeing ice magic. You're truly amazing." But Isaac didn't think much of it. It was understandable, as ice magic wasn't very practical. He was surprised. "It's not bad," he replied dismissively. "It just looks that way." Suddenly, Bill stopped in his track. He whispered a report. "Bandits, 2 people hiding near that wall. Tell me what to do." "Bill, what do you need to make ice?" Asking that all of a sudden, he urged. "Guess." He hesitated for a moment before answering. "Wait, water." Isaac controlled a small amount of water. "Exactly. Whether it's the moisture in the air or a puddle on the ground, you must shape the water into the desired form." The stream of water swirled and in sequence, compressed, condensed, expanded, and evaporated. It must undergo these 4 states. He explained diligently. Adjusting each state individually is easy, but deploying them consecutively is not. Bill looked toward the guards impatiently. "I'm going to get caught. Hurry up." One guard was yawning when he suddenly noticed something. Before he could react, he saw Isaac charging toward him. "Who are you people?" He calmly tapped his hand, and finally, a large ball of water suddenly flew toward them. The guy's expression went rigid. Right after, he was struck by the magic, which shifted its phase. He pulled the water ball back. Because of all these steps, this type of magic isn't commonly used in battle. Isaac's eyes glanced downward. "If I didn't have this magic, I wouldn't even bother using it." He held the ice stone in his hand. "I found this in the carcass of the winter spider queen. Although this magic isn't popular, the ice stone has some academic value, so it's worth a decent price." He thought to himself, "This is a surprisingly good find." Bill walked over to check on the guard. "If ice magic is so inconvenient, why even use it?" He was unconscious. He explained, "Because it's not common, very few people know about it. It's hard to distinguish from blunt force trauma, and since the ice melts, it doesn't leave any evidence behind, making this magic perfect for committing crimes stealthily." That dark, intimidating expression made Bill freeze. He whispered, "Don't you intend to finish them off?" At this moment, 2 others spotted them. "Who are they? How did they get out?" Isaac replied, "Even if I killed them, they would soon be replaced." He hid behind his back. "But wouldn't they still end up doing these things eventually?" Isaac answered as he acted. "That is precisely why I'm keeping them alive." The 2 who just arrived were knocked out. His eyebrows furrowed slightly. "I will only kill." Strange footsteps appeared in their line of sight. Alertness began to heighten. News's massive body approached, just one person. He looked at them skeptically. "You guys." Bill shouted in a panic. "News." He quickly exposed him. "Young master, he's the leader of that gang. He has a delusion about tearing people apart with his bare hands." He asked back, "Is that so?" But Isaac wasn't worried. "In any case, it saves me the trouble of having to look for him." The water ball began to emit a soft light, and then an ice spike was conjured. He controlled it, launching it toward him. News's eyes widened, about to be pierced. Surprisingly, he swung his hand and batted it away. Bill gasped in amazement. He blocked the ice with his bare hands. Isaac was also somewhat surprised. "You've got some strength. Which tribe are you from?" He grumbled in reproach. Is this really the time to be complimenting him? What do I do now? I'm going to be torn to pieces. Suddenly News spoke up. "Hey, you two." He laughed softly and happily. "You guys are goods, right? I was worried about not having enough water for a bath. Lucky me." News's gaze turned to Isaac. "And a mage too. You'll be excellent material for my dark magic." Hearing this, Bill began to panic. "Wait, spare me. It wasn't me." He slowly reached his hand out. He clutched his head and begged fearfully. "I'm just an ordinary person." Suddenly, his fingers stopped. Bill opened his eyes in bewilderment. The sight of the ice spike he had blocked earlier flying from behind him and piercing through his chest caught his eye. Stunned, the ice he had blocked before. At this moment, Isaac still held his stance from the attack. News coughed up some blood. Seeing him collapse, he finally called out to Bill. Isaac looked into his eyes and declared, "From now on, you are the leader of this place. You know what you need to do, right?" His face went rigid. The hand holding the knife tightened. Then Bill let out a roar and ran forward. Isaac stood there with a look of slight sorrow. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, Everyone has to do things they don't want to do. At least once in their life, it happens to everyone. Annette's words echoed in his ears. You probably won't be able to redo or erase it. It will haunt you and leave a mark for the rest of your life. Young master, she said while wiping the blood off his hands, then you will only have two choices left. One is to endure the shame of that sin. The other is to try and live for that person. Isaac's expression carried a deep sense of suppression. He recalled past events. When Annette was weighed down by the guilt of losing her friend Clara, she gave him that advice. Ahead, the prison guards had caught him. Bill threatened, "Give me a glass of water." The bastard whispered to himself, but he didn't need to hear that advice a second time. The wheels rolled in motion. On the carriage were Annette and the other maids. Although their clothes were dirty, her eyes still shone bright. Annette walked toward the castle because in this lifetime, Annette would not lose her friend. Going back a while before the group of maids was abducted, Hilda asked brightly, "Have you heard? The nobles from the south are looking for women from outside the city." Hearing this, Clara couldn't help but be curious. Why is that? She guessed. Could it be that the women in the city are too ugly, so they're looking for beautiful women outside to marry? She also started to have her own thoughts. So should I go to the south? Hilda covered her mouth mysteriously. I've looked into it a little bit. Her cheeks flushed slightly. There's someone who can take us to the south, just need to give them a little money. Annette was sitting quietly, dazed when she was suddenly asked, "Hilda, Annette, do you want to come along?" But she refused. "I think not. I still need to take care of my father." Now Annette stood in the study, reporting, "That was the last time I saw Hilda and Clara. We didn't see them after that." Isaac thought to himself, just as Bill suspected. He asked again, "Were you kidnapped while looking for those two?" Annette nodded in confirmation, her facial expression heavy. "When I met them again in the sewer, they had truly lost their minds." Her voice was desperate. "If I had stayed there a few more days, I probably would have gone crazy too." Isaac empathized with that. It was easy to understand. He remembered that chilling scene, as it was a place where people were either bought and sold or eaten. He was already 70 years old, let alone these young girls. Suddenly, Annette confessed, "Actually, I could have run away." Recalling it made her feel uneasy. The iron gate they used to lock me in was broken. At that time, Annette was standing in front of the bars, stunned. Beside her, a whimpering sound suddenly rang out. She turned and saw Clara with disheveled hair. Deep down, Annette couldn't help but be shaken. "If I stayed a few more days." Her hand gripping the bars trembled, leaving Clara behind. Hearing this, Isaac's eyes became pain. Annette continued, "If so, perhaps I would have been the one to send my friend to her death with my own hands. That is what happened." He expressed understanding and gratitude. "It must have been very difficult for you to recall those memories. Thank you for telling me." She suddenly stammered, Annette's demeanor a bit awkward. "There is one thing I'm still wondering about," he asked curiously. "What is it?" She recounted, "When the bandits brought us to the mansion, Clara and I were very happy." Annette remembered that moment but shuddered in fear, biting her nails. "No, if I return to the mansion. If I return, I will." Hearing this, Isaac was also confused. If she returned, would she die? She replied helplessly. Yes, it seems it wasn't just that she was afraid of being punished. He rubbed his chin, considering it seriously. "I think I understand now. I will look into it." Annette smiled and watched him for a moment. Suddenly, she covered her mouth and giggled. "Rosa said this. She said perhaps the reason the bandits suddenly released us was because of you, young master." Annette teasing is quite ridiculous, isn't it? Isaac crossed his arms helplessly, thinking to himself, "She's quite perceptive." She continued, "But actually, it makes sense, because the only person who pays attention to servants like us is you, young master." He was slightly stunned, surprised by that statement. Isaac's jade-blue eyes widened. Then he called out softly, "Annette." Isaac said sincerely, "Thank you, I'm glad you think so." He was about to say more but stopped. "Anyway, let it be. Let's talk later." Although she didn't quite understand, Annette didn't ask further. "Ah, yes, I'll be going now." The room door slowly closed. Isaac stretched his arms forward comfortably. His expression could not hide his relief. Isaac thought of Annette. "I've found an unexpected talent. Perhaps teaching her magic is worth a try." That day, the sunlight shone through the castle, and whispers echoed. "Have you heard about the maids who just returned?" The maids huddled together, whispering. They should have been fired, but now young Master Isaac has taken them back. I heard he and the head butler had a huge argument over that. Why would he go to such lengths just for servants? Don't tell me he has feelings for them. The young master is at the age where he starts to notice women. Bill carried a tray into the warehouse. He carefully placed it down. Just then, a shadow approached. Jordan called out softly, "Boss Bill." He brushed the dust off his hands. He frowned, dissatisfied. "Damn it, I told you not to call me that." Bill Neers, the new boss of the crime organization. Earlier, while fleeing, Isaac had told him, This sewer is always full of vagrants. Even if I clear out one organization in this environment, another group will rise up sooner or later. He advised, instead of doing that, wouldn't it be better to keep them under control and manage them? Bill thought to himself. You planned this from the very beginning. That's why you made me sign the contract, right? He clutched his head, gritting his teeth in frustration. Now if there's an argument or rebellion, wouldn't my neck be the first to be broken? After that, he stabilized his emotions and sat down in a spot there. Bill started asking about the situation. News only planted you guys in the mansion, he replied. Yes, the previous boss told us to keep an eye on the mansion. Hearing this, he smirked. That guy News always plants people in noble houses. It seems he wasn't just a crazy bastard. Jordan added, and the boss always prepared a tribute. Bill frowned. Tribute? What tributes? He explained the tribute would be offered to the knights around this time of year. The reason we endure staying in this dump is because the knights have been protecting us. His complexion was shocked. Knights backing you guys. A few days later, in Isaac's bedroom, he conjured a fireball in his hand. Afterward, Isaac threw it forward with force. His jade blue pupils shone prominently. The fire was just a decoy. The real thing was the ice pillar that followed right after it. The ball aimed at the wall in front. Suddenly, he clenched his fist. The fireball immediately disappeared, leaving only the ice spike that slammed into the wall. Once done, Isaac panted for breath. After killing News, his mana circuits increased from 4 to 5. He himself understood that he now needed to practice chanting multiple spells simultaneously, because with News, he only got lucky. Remembering the previous events, his familiarity with the terrain, the weak guards, and his negligence, all these conditions caused News to lower his guard, leading to his demise. His eyes narrowed slightly with self-reproach. His clenched hand at his side trembled. No, my own hands ended. Isaac flopped back onto the bed. Before dying, Jonas had told him many things, including stories about the enemies of the Von Goth house. They were all optimized to deal with mages. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, there won't be any luck like with News next time. I need to become stronger to protect Von Goth. The next morning, a loud call woke him from his sleep. Isaac sat up immediately. What is it? Lyra and Han entered. It's morning, please wake up, sir. She signaled to Han, hand the young master's clothes. He turned to go fetch them. Yes. Isaac placed his feet on the floor and asked, why so sudden? Why are you doing this? Lyra brought a basin of water over. What do you mean, sir? She smiled and announced, the master of the house has returned. Hearing that, he couldn't help but be startled. Isaac's heart pounded a few beats faster. Outside the city gates, Isaac von Goth rode in on horseback. Thinking of that, he asked distractedly, Father is back. Flashing back to a time in his previous life, some notches on a wooden wall were used to keep track of the days. In the dark room, the young man with long, light-colored hair sat at his desk. He used a quill to fill pages of a diary with extremely mysterious notes. The door to the room suddenly opened as the Lord entered, holding a large sword. The head of the family looked toward the desk in surprise upon realizing his son's unexpected presence. The knight observed the person in the room with surprise and suspicion, as his son Isaac stood silently in the middle of the room, creating a tense atmosphere. Isaac stared at his father's boots, while a few scraps and leaves fell to the floor. The count helping his son in the dark room, carefully cutting the boy's silver hair. The father said that if this was truly what he wanted, he would respect that choice without a second of hesitation. He added in a sad voice that he could ensure everything would end peacefully and without any pain. An older Isaac, with wrinkles on his face, observed the situation with weariness and sorrow. The count continued to carefully cut his son's long hair, while the boy remained in absolute silence. The father asked once more if this was truly what he wanted, and the young man firmly confirmed it. The count emotionally hugged his son and said that this would be the last time they would meet. He touched his forehead against the young man in an affectionate gesture and shared a deep farewell before leaving. The father said he would go on ahead to wait for him and left the room, leaving the young man alone in the darkness. He asked his son to come to him without carrying any regrets in his heart. Back in the present, the beautiful morning sunlight shone through the large, ornate windows of the office in the mansion. Isaac thought that this was the first time they had met face to face since that tragic day. The young man sat down and greeted his father, who was focused on reading important reports for the family. The count said he had heard that he had recently helped sick children in Black Goose Village. Isaac was surprised by the question, and his father revealed he had heard the story from Schiller, but found it hard to believe. The boy answered modestly, saying he was just lucky to have cured the children. He lied, saying he had found the exact answer for that unusual pneumonia in an old book. The father tapped his fingers on the wooden desk while pondering his son's story. The Count changed the subject and asked how his body had been feeling lately after his training. Isaac answered with relief that he hadn't caused any more human explosions and that the doctor they hired was very skilled. The sunlight shone through the beautiful, vibrant stained glass windows of the library, illuminating the vast office. The father and son continued their conversation quite calmly and peacefully in the middle of the giant study. The father looked at his son seriously and asked about the situation regarding his command and daily life at the castle. Isaac proactively asked specifically for news regarding the important border fortress. The lord asked back about his son's interest, and the boy replied that one day he would need to go there to serve. The count explained that the situation there hadn't changed, with plenty of monsters, knights, and heavy snowfall. He added that the only big news was that they had stopped at Burn City on the way back. The young man recalled that Burn City was where the dangerous sewage system was located. The father pointed at his pipe and revealed that a terrible, extremely serious incident had occurred there. He reported that a private soldier had attacked his commander, and Isaac deduced that the traitor must have been eliminated. The lord denied it and explained that the injured commander himself had unexpectedly requested a military tribunal. Isaac became contemplative, wondering why the commander would take such a suspicious action. Suddenly, the door opened, and the count greeted those who had just arrived. Two knights walked into the room, bowing respectfully to the young master and praising his growth. Isaac glanced at the two men with an analytical and silent gaze, trying to read their thoughts. One of the two knights, who was wearing a headband, smiled at him in a friendly way without suspecting his doubts. The lord allowed Fickle and Randolph to enter and politely dismissed Isaac to go and rest. The boy immediately accepted his father's order and left the room, closing the large, exquisite wooden door. When outside, he heard the voice of one of the two men, demanding that the military tribunal be convened as soon as possible. The man insisted that the traitor needed to be removed quickly to maintain military discipline for the soldier. The count argued that he was acting too hastily and asked Randolph if he agreed with the execution. Randolph calmly replied that he simply followed all direct orders from the commander-in-chief. The other man sighed and scoffed, asking if he would really say that even after the captain tore his ear off. Outside, Isaac walked down the hallway in a contemplative mood, trying to expose the secret of the two men with his bright blue eyes. He analyzed the events, knowing that a border secret was involved. The boy remembered that the crests on the two men's uniforms showed they were border guards. He intelligently deduced that the injured man named Randolph was the main victim of that rebellion. Suddenly, hurried, panting footsteps running on the red carpet caught the young master's attention. The servant ran over in desperation, urgently asking him to go with him and get out of there. He revealed in absolute horror that an extremely urgent situation had just happened inside the castle. The young master went with the servant through the outer and remote areas of the large stone castle. The male lad asked the man what was going on that he was in such a rush. He said he had heard rumors about human trafficking in the sewage system, and the boy replied that he already knew. Bill revealed that some people had taken bribes to turn a blind eye to the entire criminal situation. With a very serious expression, the young master immediately asked who the culprit was. The servant began to sweat from stress, hesitating to reveal the identities of those involved in the plot. He revealed that the guilty parties were the Winterband Knights, making the boy extremely surprised. The man added that a body of one of their allies had recently been found at the entrance to the sewer. He said that all parts of the victim's body had been cut off, except for the little finger of the left hand. The young master asked what had happened next, and the servant appeared very hesitant to continue. The man confessed that something horrific had happened early that morning. He revealed in terror that when he woke up, he had found that very severed finger mysteriously lying on his bed. The man said the enemy had sent a warning message directly through one of their underlings. The threat stated that if the money wasn't prepared within 2 days at most, the situation would get much worse. The servant panicked when he realized his own finger would be the next one to be cut off if he failed. He begged for help and blamed the young boy for pushing him into that dangerous leadership position. The young master kept a calm expression while coldly analyzing the severity of the entire situation. He asked if anyone had witnessed the attack, and the servant replied that there was one witness. The witness said a flash of a blade had appeared before their eyes, and everything was over in the blink of an eye. The only notable detail they could remember was that the attacker had a bandage wrapped around his head. The boy narrowed his bright blue eyes when he realized that description was quite specific. He simply said he understood the situation, making the servant angry at his coldness. The young master began to walk slowly and calmly told the servant not to worry. He assured him with absolute confidence that the man wouldn't die and that he would protect his life. He recalled that his father had returned with 2 knights, requesting a military tribunal. On the way, they had stopped near the sewer and executed a criminal to set an example for the other. The entire physical description the witness provided matched the appearance of that border knight perfect. The young master gritted his teeth in anger when he realized the audacity and betrayal of his own guard. He walked with resolute, angry steps, thinking about the hypocrisy of those supposedly border knights. He concluded that if everything was true, they were nothing but a terminal illness that needed to be cut out of the kingdom. The young master proceeded to the dungeon, immediately attracting the attention of the guard on duty with his footsteps. The guard was quite surprised and asked what had brought the young heir all the way to the bottom of the dungeon. The boy asked directly, but the presence of the prisoner, who had been sentenced to death for the crime of rebellion. In one of the darkest cells, the criminal was waiting, shackled by his terrible final fate. The young master firmly declared that he had come there only to speak with the prisoner. The shackled man opened his eyes, revealing an extremely sharp and terrifying gaze in the darkness. The boy revealed that his goal there was to confirm whether the knights were truly involved with the bandits. In front of the bars, he directly asked if the man knew about Nyazi's notorious criminal organization. The boy added that he had heard about their involvement in the horrific human trafficking case. Upon hearing that revelation, the prisoner reacted immediately, clenching both fists with great force. He glared at the young master with an extremely dark and hostile look, keeping absolute silence in the cell. The young master observed the prisoner's facial details and felt his face looked quite familiar. He asked if the man knew about the mysterious connection between the city sewer and his military commander. The shackled man only kept his lips shut, refusing to answer the boy's question. He shook his heavy iron chains and coldly warned that he would only say this once. Suddenly, he lunged aggressively and gripped the bars, startling the young master who was standing in front of him. The prisoner roared in anger that he knew nothing and demanded the boy get out of here immediately. The boy continued to face his rage with absolute calm, showing no fear or backing down. Ignoring the screams, the young master calmly asked what the real name of the rebellious prisoner was. He answered that his name was Carlson, and the boy gave a smile when he heard that important revelation. The young master finally remembered his face and asked if he would continue to lie, calling him Kyle. The prisoner's eyes widened in total shock when he realized his real name had been discovered. He backed away in surprise, causing the heavy iron chains to clank in the dark cell. The rebel glared at the boy in deep astonishment and asked how he could know that secret name. The young man recalled that he had known this name when the kingdom's bloody civil war reached its peak. The entire horrific power struggle had begun at the official, solemn succession ceremony for the royal throne. On that occasion, the second prince was defeated and decided to betray the nation, allying with the empire to seize power. This horrific betrayal ultimately caused a violent and bloody clash right in the middle of the celebration. As the kingdom collapsed, the people rose up and started a rebellion led by Kyle himself during the Civil War. Now he pretended to be someone else and desperately asked how a child could know so many royal secrets. The boy answered with absolute calm that he had simply read the entire incredible story in a history book. The book contained detailed records and beautiful illustrations about the lives of many famous criminals on the continent. The work described the young leader as a military genius who was destined to become the 7th master swordsman of the world. Facing him directly, the young master realized that the description of his talent was completely true. The prisoner exuded an impressive amount of mana, thanks to extremely rigorous training. He swallowed hard as he tried to imagine the destructive power this warrior would have once he truly awakened. In his previous life, the rebel had escaped his sentence and angrily demanded the young man tell him how he knew all of that. The boy told him to calm down and revealed that he also knew the man was the legitimate son of the legendary warrior. The warrior began to shake all over with tension and whispered, asking who this boy actually was. Isaac asked how he could serve in the military without recognizing the eldest son of the family ruling. The prisoner asked if he had come to finish him off, but the boy said he wasn't interested in the life of a common mercenary. He added that he had no interest in a deserter who had disappeared from the map for more than 10 consecutive years. The man doubted the identity of the speaker, but Isaac said he only wanted an answer to one single, serious question. With a very serious expression, the boy prepared to get the important information he craved. He asked why the border commander was directly involved in human trafficking. Pristity looked at the burning candle and said that if the boy was the young master, he should know what was happening there. He took a step forward, chains clanking, and said, "That is the biggest reason why I'm not saying anything at all." The young master crossed his arms in thought, understanding the man's strong reluctance to cooperate with the investigation. The boy warned that the commander would pin all the blame on him and make him a wanted deserter. He concluded coldly that acting this way would ensure the prisoner could never carry out his plan for revenge. The word revenge made the prisoner's shackled hands tremble instantly with hatred. He maintained absolute silence. The two continued to stare at each other in a tense, heavy silence within the dark castle dungeon. The boy decided to turn away, realizing that this man would not be as easily manipulated as the servant Bill. He left the dungeon corridor, knowing that this time he would need to act in a completely different way. The young master concluded that his only viable option now was to bait the traitorous knights himself. A few drops of water began to fall, echoing quietly against the damp walls of the sewer. Two figures draped in dark cloaks crept stealthily through the long, abandoned tunnel. One of the intruders felt it was very strange not to see any trace of the Near's gang's minions around. The hooded man pointed his index finger forward, gesturing toward something unusual at the end of the corridor. He was surprised to find that all the iron cells that once held the kidnapped slaves were completely empty. They complained about the delays in bribery payments and being suddenly summoned by the former bandit boss to this meeting. The intruder opened a large, crude door, wondering if the new bandit boss intended to call off the deal. As they stepped through the entrance, the two criminals immediately stopped in their tracks and let out a surprised groan. The servant Bill offered an extremely awkward, trembling smile while trying to hide his overwhelming panic. Trembling with extreme fear, the man gestured with his hands and politely invited the two guests in. One of the disguised knights immediately grew suspicious upon seeing one of Nears's henchmen dressed as a mansion servant. He noted that the man was unarmed, but also noticed that the servant's legs wouldn't stop shaking from the tension. The two criminals exchanged a quick, silent, and complicit look, deciding to venture deeper into the dark room. They drew the sharp swords hidden beneath their cloaks and stepped fully into the secret lair. The hooded knight entered the dark room with a cold gaze, trying to identify who was lurking in the shadows. Before them, a mysterious figure sat with crossed arms at the head of a large wooden table. He mockingly asked if the person there was the new boss of Nears, the one who had summoned them without proper hospitality. The man threatened, saying that the fake leader must think he had 7 lives to treat them this way. The mysterious figure asked a single question, leaving the two intruders completely paralyzed with shock on the spot. They immediately became highly alert upon realizing that the calm voice belonged to a small child. His face illuminated by candlelight, the boy calmly asked why they were acting with such violence. One of the knights began to break into a cold sweat under his hood, upon clearly recognizing the person sitting before him. Suddenly, one of them knelt on the floor, leaving his companion standing next to him confused. The standing soldier asked about that action, but the warrior on his knees shouted desperately, ordering him to kneel. He asked if his ally was an idiot for not recognizing the great and important status of the boy present here. The knight bowed his head in deep submission, declaring it a great honor to meet him again in this place. The young master stood up calmly with a smirk and asked if they wanted to drink anything. By calling them by their real names, the young master made Sir Fickle and Sir Randolph tremble with terror in the darkness. Everything had begun a bit earlier in an isolated cabin in the middle of the frozen forest. Inside, a man enthusiastically held a bag full of gold coins they had acquired. He praised the skills of the late Near in making so much money so easily. Holding a gold coin in his hand, the other rejoiced that this money would ensure food and firewood for the whole month. Hearing this, his companion said they could even trade in his old sword and still have some left over. He began tossing the gold coins to his partner while laughing loudly at their luck tonight. But their joy didn't last long when heavy footsteps and a mysterious boot appeared at the entrance. A voice from the darkness ordered them to stop immediately, making the two criminals panic. Kyle appeared before them, revealing that he had just heard their entire conversation about the money. The man tried to hide the bag of money on the table with a desperate and futile, panicked gesture. With a threatening gaze, Kyle asked exactly what they thought they were doing. Back in the present, Isaac calmly drank tea while listening to the explanation from the two guards. Sitting at the head of the table, the young heir accepted that they truly had a reason for it. He said that his father was a very strict man and only acted as the shield of the North. They admired his honor, but could not sit idly by and watch their soldiers suffer from hunger and thirst. With no other choice, they decided to extort the bandits to make up for the resource shortages and protect the land. Fickle enthusiastically agreed, saying that had been their plan from the beginning. The young master listened to everything with his eyes closed, preparing to deliver his final judgment. He opened his striking blue eyes and coldly pronounced the names of Fickle and Randolph, to the utter despair of the two knights. Isaac declared the punishment for their crimes to be definitive death. The boy warned that they would be handed over to a military tribunal, because his father would issue the exact same verdict. Fickle lost his patience, slamming the table and asking if the boy still didn't understand their pain. The soldier glared back and concluded that a kid like him would never understand their misery. He asked if Isaac had ever felt extreme hunger or witnessed comrades fall in the cold without proper weapons. The young master looked at him without a shred of emotion and answered very directly that he had never experienced that. Isaac stood up and said that Fickle was just piling up hollow excuses for his mistake. The young master questioned them about kidnapping civilians, and Fickle quickly blamed Nears for acting alone. The boy still stood watching the two traffickers with an extremely stern and overwhelming gaze. Isaac asked if he truly believed he hadn't crossed the unforgivable line just like the bandits. Fickle became completely enraged when he realized the young master would absolutely show them no mercy. He clenched his fists in anger, realizing how foolish he was to expect sympathy from this boy. The traitor ordered Randolph to stand up so they could fight like the true swords of gold. With a fierce look, Fickle drew his metal sword, ready to eliminate the young master right on the spot. He pointed the sharp sword tip at Isaac and vowed to slash anyone who stood in his way. Randolph panicked at his partner's insane attitude and begged him to reconsider. Fickle replied that the commander still had another young master, and they had to remove this threat immediately as tension filled the room. The boy continued to observe the two men's reactions cold. At that moment, Randolph drew his sword, and a powerful blue aura of spiritual energy began to wrap around the blade. The knight stepped forward with heavy footsteps as he channeled the spiritual aura through his boot. The young master followed the soldier's movements, seeming slightly curious about the situation. Fickle smiled, believing his partner had finally decided to help him eliminate the boy. He focused all his attention on attacking Isaac, never imagining what his partner was about to do. Randolph looked at his friend with deep sadness and wondered why things had come to this. He nostalgically remembered that initially, all their actions were truly for the benefit of Goad. But he realized the path they were on had become too dark, and he hesitated to use his blade. The soldier bowed his head, wondering if they could still call that loyalty. Randolph bit his lip hard as he made an extremely difficult decision regarding their fate. He stood up to confront his friend and asked if he still remembered the oath they had made before. The man recalled the covenant that if one were the sword, the other would be the shield. Randolph remembered Carlson's advice that a perfect sword that cuts through everything without breaking is a masterpiece. But he understood that the situation changed completely when the warrior strayed from his original path. He warned that if this masterpiece developed its own will, it would eventually become a terrifying, vicious sword. Fickle was completely shocked to be blocked by his ally and asked what he thought he was doing. The two brothers-in-arms began trading fierce blows as their blades clashed powerfully. Randolph confessed that he could only understand the painful truth after losing his ear. He shouted at Fickle that the prisoner Carlson was absolutely right about the corruption that was consuming them. Fickle broke into a cold sweat as he realized the comrade who had been through so many battles had truly turned against him. He tried to convince Randolph to stop this madness, warning that the young heir would take his life. Randolph replied firmly that if that happened, it would only be a tragedy of their own making. He decided to speak clearly once, and for all and through the rawest truths into the face of his old comrade. During the exchange of fierce attack, he slapped Fickle with the reality that money was never meant for the soldiers alone. He asked if the traitor truly spent that vast fortune thinking only of the territory's prosperity. The fight ended brutally, and silence returned to the room once the fatal clash concluded. Back in the dungeon, Randolph explained to Isaac that this was why Carlson decided to act in the past. The knight revealed that they only intended to silence the prisoner, but ended up being defeated by him instead. Isaac listened to it all calmly and concluded with disdain that they simply lost to that warrior. The soldier admitted that Carlson could have finished them off right then if he had wanted to. Instead, he only cut off Randolph's ear as a lesson and let himself be captured without resistance. Crossing his arms, Isaac asked if he avoided Carlson's punishment just because he felt guilty. Randolph bowed his head sadly and remained absolutely silent. Facing this truth, he trembled with anxiety and confessed in a low voice that he was extremely worried about the future awaiting him. The man wondered what would become of his beloved family if the entire story of his betrayal were exposed. Isaac looked at him seriously and said the knight must understand the consequences better than anyone else. Randolph shuddered in panic at the boy's coldness and felt the terrible weight of his past choices. In the corner of the room, the servant Bill was holding a bag containing Fickle's body, desperately thinking of a way to escape. Isaac kept his gaze fixed on the prisoner and began to develop a strategic plan to resolve the situation. He called for Sir Randolph in an authoritative voice, immediately catching the knight's attention. The young heir asked directly if he was willing to atone for his grave sins in another way. With the knight's acceptance, the official version of the incident began to be rewritten by the young master. The new version stated that Randolph and Fickle were only dealing with Nears to secure emergency supplies for the troops. The report indicated that Fickle had acted alone out of greed, leading the smuggling ring and kidnapping maids from the mansion. It also stated clearly that when the plan failed, the traitor attempted to sell Isaac to foreigners and use the boy as a hostage. But the wicked plot was stopped in time, thanks to the heroic actions of a special person. The official report declared that the loyal knight Randolph was the one who saved the heir and stopped the criminal. Thanks to that, all the horrific sins were laid entirely on the shoulders of the deceased Fickle. The traitor's body was displayed publicly in the town square before the locals as a warning to everyone. Cloaked in a dark robe that hid his face, Randolph witnessed the punishment for his old comrade. The knight walked quietly through the village streets under the watchful eyes of the surrounding people. Afterward, Isaac met his father in the luxurious and majestic reception room of the Goth family mansion. While drinking hot tea, the boy thought that the severe lack of resources was the real reason for the betrayal. The horrific lack of basic necessities was the harsh and cruel reality that the Goth family faced every day. They protected the northern border and received an annual tax from the royal family. This was their main source of income. However, the big problem was that this royal tax had dropped sharply year after year. Even so, the Goth family could not complain to the king, nor could they attempt to get rich independently. All this misery happened because of the actions of Zeke von Goth, the mad mage who once burned the imperial capital in the past. The cursed legacy of the ancestor had destroyed the family's reputation and glory forever. Because no one could defeat the mad mage, the king submitted to the emperor, and Zeke was finally eliminated by the knights. Afterwards, the kingdom became a vassal, and the Goth family lost the ducal title, remaining only counts. Exiled to the desolate northern lands, any attempt to accumulate wealth would be viewed with extreme suspicion. The royal family would consider it treason, making maintaining the current system the safest path for survival. However, Isaac calmly thought that this hasty conclusion might be a major mistake on their part. The boy warned his father and the advisors that this antiquated way of thinking was just an unfounded assumption. The count's eyes widened in surprise upon realizing the audacity and immense intelligence behind his son's words. Isaac explained that the kingdom's finances were weakening every year, and the shield tax would continue to decrease accordingly. He asked if the king was truly suspicious, or just relieved to see the Goth family self-sufficient. The young master decided to speak plainly and expose the most truthful reality regarding the territory's financial issue. Isaac asserted that the real obstacle was never the royal ban, but the fact that they had never found a solution. Isaac reminded them that they were completely surrounded by barren lands and dangerous enemy forces. The count contemplated deeply on the opinions his son provided while resting his chin on his hand. He admitted that the boy's ideas made sense, but demanded he provide something concrete to resolve the crisis. The head of the family clasped his hands together and warned that such a proposal only had value when accompanied by a viable plan of action. With a sharp look, the man asked directly if the boy had the ability to provide this saving answer. Isaac maintained a steady stance, his bright blue eyes showing he knew exactly what had to be done. The young heir reached out and stated with absolute confidence that they had to start acting without any further delay. The boy revealed that the most crucial first step was to decisively cut all ties with the old church. He explained that the church's ascetic doctrines were preventing the family from prospering and creating true wealth. The count grew tense at the bold proposal and warned that the Vatican would not just sit back and accept this rebellion. The boy clenched his fist with determination, agreeing that exactly for that reason, they needed a perfect excuse. Isaac wore a cunning smile, assuring him that he already had the ideal method to create an indisputable pretext. Faced with that impressive revelation, the count turned to Schiller in search of wise counsel. The head steward sipped his tea, wondering if all these brilliant ideas truly originated from Isaac's own mind. Schiller praised the boy with admiration, commenting that it was hard to believe he possessed so much wisdom despite his struggles with mana. Impressed by the turn of events, the Count rose from his armchair to observe his son's next step. Through the mansion window, he watched Isaac calmly strolling in the garden alongside his new ally. The boy walked with Kyle while discussing preparations to permanently weaken the church's influence. The Count observed the scene from afar with a contemplative gaze, proud of his heir's early maturity. He placed his hand on the cold windowpane while pondering the bright destiny awaiting the family. Schiller maintained his usual elegant composure as he tracked his master's silent thoughts. The conversation between father and son ended, leaving an absolute certainty in the air that major changes were about to unfold. A few days later, south of Bern City, a mysterious carriage traveled along the road toward a church. The vehicle suddenly stopped in front of the ancient temple, while a hooded figure waited patiently. A man in a dark cloak, carrying a bright lantern, stepped out to welcome the guests from the carriage. With a grim tone, the hooded figure spoke a secret password to initiate the forbidden negotiation. The carriage driver slowly stepped down, remaining on high alert as he heard the cult ally's password. The guest replied with the second part of the chilling password, confirming his identity in the secret meeting. The lantern bearer nodded in agreement, realizing he was working with the right partner. He ordered the promised goods to be brought out immediately so they could begin the terrifying dark ritual. Two hooded figures dragged a silver-haired boy, who was tightly bound, out from the carriage. The boy was shoved brutally by the henchmen, unable to resist due to the ropes tied tightly around his hands. The leader asked if this fragile boy was truly the noble offering they had promised for the ritual. He brought the lantern close to the hostage's face to personally verify the victim's identity. The man wore a twisted, terrifying smile as he enjoyed the triumph of the ruthless kidnapper. The light-haired boy remained gagged and silent, showing no signs of panic in front of the cultists. The kidnapper ordered the servant to bring the true, precious reward the deal had promised immediately. He arrogantly assured them that the terrifying goddess of fire would welcome this noble offering with open arms. The group began leading the young victim deep into the dark interior of the religious temple where they would perform the ritual. An elderly woman in a dark cloak welcomed the group, saying everything was proceeding exactly according to the goddess's will. Then she turned around and asked in a mysterious tone for everyone to follow her into the ancient temple. Bill, disguised as the carriage driver, whispered in disgust about the dark cult they were about to enter. He quickly corrected himself and ordered in a low voice for the group to continue moving forward without hesitation. Kyle and Randolph walked right behind the kidnappers, escorting young Isaac, who was pretending to be tied with rope. The elderly woman raised her bright lantern to illuminate the dark path and once again requested they follow her. The group descended the dark, damp stone stairs leading straight to the cultists' underground lair. To maintain their cover in front of the cultists, Randolph placed his hand on Isaac's shoulder with firmness and authority. Kyle walked while keeping a cold, focused gaze beneath his hooded cloak, fully prepared for any danger. He observed everything around him with extreme attention, knowing that one small mistake could put everyone's life at risk. A flashback occurred of a few days prior, when a hot cup of tea was served during a private conversation. Kyle asked if he was being released because he exposed the knight's crimes, and Isaac confirmed that was the plan. The young master explained that rebellion was a serious crime, so the warrior had lost his leadership position. Kyle calmly replied that he didn't even know he had once held such an important position in the army. He paused for a moment before bringing the teacup to his lips. Intrigued by the boy's next words, Isaac asked with a friendly smile if he recognized this type of tea, revealing that the drink originated from his homeland. The warrior looked at the teacup in surprise when he realized the young heir knew his true foreign origin. Kyle set the teacup back on the table and asked directly why he hadn't reported him to the authorities. He reminded the young heir that he knew very well his real name wasn't Carlson. Isaac admitted that he needed to keep this secret to use his skills at the right time. Kyle started to break into a cold sweat at the revelation, unable to grasp what the boy was planning. The young master advised the man to focus on his own goals, instead of trying to guess what others were thinking. He asked if Kyle was aiming for the life of the greedy old man who had destroyed the family he had tried to build. Isaac revealed the target's name was Viscount Klaus von Bottmer, leaving the warrior completely shocked. Kyle asked in horror how the boy knew this and why he hadn't tried to stop his revenge. The warrior explained that his target was an important noble in this kingdom, while he himself was just a foreigner. Isaac revealed that what he truly needed was a perfect sword, possessing its own iron will. He promised that if the man lent him his legendary strength, he would ensure the desired revenge was carried out. Kyle watched the young heir in silence, realizing this was a partnership offer he couldn't refuse. Back in Burn City, a preacher screamed in the middle of the street to attract the attention of all the local residents. The fanatic roared at the top of his lungs about the terrifying threats ravaging the region. He warned that dark magic was spreading like a plague, and the cultists were committing ruthless acts that could not be forgiven. The preacher ordered everyone to seek salvation in faith, and not from a feudal lord who only knew how to stand by and watch without act. Inside the carriage passing through the area, Kyle observed the man and commented on the old church's fanatics. Randolph complained that the church collected heavy tithes from the family, but continued to smear the Lord of Gothia in public. Isaac cut off his allies' discussion, stating that this subject wasn't the most important one at the moment. Randolph asked anxiously if the young master was absolutely sure about acting as bait for the ritual. The young heir explained that the fanatics were looking for fame, and there was no bait more enticing than him in the north. Kyle warned that they had no idea of the deadly dangers awaiting them inside the fanatics' lair. Randolph emphasized the terrifying rumors about cruel rituals and asked if it was really worth risking their lives. Isaac ignored the warnings and asked if the old church was really providing financial support to this dark cult. The boy's bright blue eyes flashed with determination as he analyzed the details of the conspiracy in his mind. Kyle commented that the money they used to bribe the guards came directly from the cursed cult's treasury. The young master agreed and confirmed this was the official version they would present to the kingdom. Isaac remembered that the coins from Nier were of high quality and minted by the royal family, which was impossible for a bandit. Randolph agreed that the origin of those gold coins was highly suspicious and showed the presence of a powerful ally. Kyle speculated that only the old church could have this kind of access, but questioned whether this could prove a direct link to the cult. He wondered if the young master was truly planning to cling to such a slim and meaningless hope. The male lead recalled that it was exactly around this time that the situation began to descend into chaos throughout the entire northern territory. The dark cult began to ruin the land from within with bizarre rituals that left the people paralyzed with fear. The old church was the group that benefited the most from this general panic, pretending to hunt down members of the secret cult. They arrested those labeled as believers and purged them with public fires in the middle of the village square. Witnessing this fake display of divine mercy, the people began to worship the church even more. From then on, Goth's situation became unsustainable, and the nobles began to complain about that horrific absurdity. They whined that the church had doubled the tithe and even demanded soldiers for construction while they were struggling to survive. The territory began to suffer under financial pressure and heavier demands from the old church. Thus, the domain count suffered from extreme famine, and Isaac decided it was time to decisively break the agreement with. This courageous attitude was just the first step to being able to protect the people and the Goth territory. Back in the dark dungeon, the elderly woman slowly descended the damp stone stairs while leaning on an old cane. The elderly woman said everything had started here when the church burned this place down, and only 3 saints survived the Great Fire. She said the wounded survivors saw God face to face, but Bill just wished she would shut up for once. The woman continued her bizarre sermon, claiming that human souls reside directly inside human flesh. She explained that eating this flesh would cause the soul to be reborn in them, with all the wisdom and vitality of the person offered. At that moment, they saw many believers eating the forbidden body parts in a gruesome banquet to achieve eternity. Bill was absolutely horrified as he witnessed the disgusting and barbaric acts unfolding before his eyes. The elderly woman slammed her cane on the floor and shrieked that the prophesied offering had finally reached the altar. The cultists became agitated on the floor as she ordered them to eat the flesh to become noble and pure like the victim. With a terrifying smile, the old woman introduced Isaac as the perfect soul containing all the qualities for the banquet. She opened her mouth in a grotesque manner and ordered everyone to begin eating the boy right on the spot without a shred of mercy. Bill lost his patience, kicked the elderly woman away, and said he couldn't listen to any more of this insane and meaningless nonsense. He shouted in frustration, asking Isaac how much more of this bizarre insanity they had to endure in this cave. The knight stepped forward and began to untie the fake ropes, binding the young master's hands to initiate the fight. Isaac removed the gag and sighed with relief as he saw Bill finally act exactly as he had expected. The young master calmly ordered his allies to engage only with the believers who attacked them first. The cultists retreated in terror when they realized the supposed victims were actually ruthless warriors. Isaac warned his associates seriously not to forget the true strategic plan that had brought them to this place. The woman lying on the ground shrieked in hatred, promising that a horrific curse from the goddess would descend upon the intruder. Randolph interrupted her with a precise blow to the face to silence her forever and end that annoying screaming. The knight pointed his sharp weapon out and warned the other fanatics that whoever dared take a step forward would be instantly killed. He assured them with a terrifying gaze that he would take down any opponent before they could even feel pain. Upon hearing that horrific threat, most of the cultists ran away in a panic, trying to escape that place. Randolph was slightly surprised to see the whole gang running away in desperation through the dark hallways of the dungeon. The henchmen ran so fast that in just a few seconds, the entrance to the temple was completely empty and silent. Kyle asked if they should chase after those fleeing, but Isaac replied that the priority now was to search the entire area. Randolph sighed wearily and concluded that these insane cultists were nothing but a chaotic joke. Kyle knelt beside the woman who had fainted on the floor and calmly asked if she could stand up on her own. The elderly woman regained consciousness in a confused state, asking where she was and begging them not to hit her, which made Kyle curious about her reaction. Randolph sarcastically asked if she had suddenly aged and made a biting comment about the old woman's mental state. The elderly woman begged for mercy, mistaking Isaac for the deacon. But the boy only called her mother in a friendly manner. The young master bent down with patience and a gentle smile, asking where this old woman's real home was. A moment later, the group arrived at a humble wooden cabin located in the slums in the southern part of Burn City. When they entered the house and looked up at the attic, the knights were stunned into silence by what they had just discovered. Before them was a chest overflowing with a large pile of shiny, high-quality silver coins. They couldn't believe that a poor, humble old woman was hiding a massive treasure in her attic. Randolph pushed his greedy comrade aside and asked if they were sure this money belonged to the royal family. Isaac nodded in affirmation, confirming that his loyal knight Randolph's suspicion was correct. The boy analyzed the coins very carefully and assured them that the official seal engraved on the metal belonged to the royal mint. He celebrated because they had obtained the evidence linking the cult to the church, but was interrupted by a knock on the door and a voice calling out. Suddenly, the cabin door opened, and someone announced loudly that they were entering the humble room. The voice of the newcomer echoed through the house as he kindly asked the old woman how she was doing. Upstairs, Isaac's eyes widened in total shock when he realized whose voice that was. The boy immediately recognized the person who had just entered as an influential priest from the old church. With a discreet smile on his face, the man asked in a friendly tone if the ritual had been a great success. Sitting on the bed, the elderly woman broke into a cold sweat and hesitated to answer the man in front of her. Trying to hide her extreme panic, she trembled all over and tried to mutter a few disjointed words to distract the visitor's attention. With panic-stricken eyes, she stuttered in terror and claimed that demons had infiltrated the temple and destroyed everything. The woman loudly revealed that ruthless creatures had profaned the sacred altar and annihilated all the cult's followers. In a panic, she begged for a divine miracle, while the priest looked confused and demanded a clear explanation about the demons. Barely able to breathe, she tried to feign insanity by calling the man the deacon and making up an absurd story in the room. The old woman sobbed on the bed, saying her husband was hitting her and begging desperately for help. The priest sighed in impatience at the theatrics, deducing that the old woman had completely lost her mind. However, a slight creaking sound from the attic caught the man's attention and immediately put him on guard. He turned sharply with a suspicious gaze toward the wooden stairs leading to the attic. The priest observed the top of the stairs in the darkness, suspecting that someone was hiding up there. The man gathered magic energy in his hand and coldly warned that he had realized there was an intruder in the house. He concluded in his mind that the old woman was no longer useful and their secret could not be revealed. Therefore, he intended to incinerate the evidence of his corruption, along with all the wealth accumulated in that filthy attic. Kyle observed the threat from above and warned that true devils often hide behind holy light. In the blink of an eye, Kyle appeared behind the clergyman with a sharp blade pressed against the traitor's throat. Trembling and sweating in terror, the clergyman tried to threaten the warrior, warning that the Vatican would avenge his death. Isaac began to walk slowly down the wooden stair, commenting that he had finally remembered the man's identity. The young master smirked and greeted the traitor sarcastically as he approached in the living room. Time skipped to the next morning at the city's majestic cathedral, where the deacon appeared, bound and captured. Bound tightly to a wooden chair with heavy ropes, the corrupt clergyman had no way to escape. Weeping in desperation, the prisoner began to confess that the old church wanted to expand its influence within the territory. He revealed that to achieve this goal, the bishop had ordered them to create a fictional villain to instill fear in the people. Thus, the man created a new doctrine and incited poor, homeless wanderers to establish that horrific cult. The deacon bitterly admitted that this very conspiracy had birthed the terrible cult that had once terrorized the land. Randolph commented indignantly that this was the worst confession he had ever heard and asked what they would do next. Isaac kept a cold, contemplative expression, knowing that this confession was the card he needed for his chess game. The young master decided that his advisor Schiller would take the prisoner to the cathedral so they could begin formal negotiation. The bound clergyman spat on the ground and laughed loudly, saying the bishop would surely punish the Gotha family severely. Not letting him speak further, Isaac admitted that he himself was the one who planned this. So if they wanted to collect their debt, just tell them to come here and find him. This left the fat man completely bewildered. Night fell over the territory. In the silent dungeon, a lonely candle burned, casting flickering shadows against the cold stone walls. The monk constantly stomped his feet on the ground in restlessness. The bound clergyman broke into a cold sweat, thinking that his entire plan had collapsed in a single night because of a child. Suddenly, an unbearable sharp pain struck the deacon's chest, causing him to moan in pure agony. The man laughed grotesquely and mocked that the young heir was merely the descendant of barbarians. The prisoner ensured that divine justice would fall upon Isaac's sins before he drew his final breath. He felt his strength fading as he babbled that the bishop would surely bring about the punishment the boy deserved. With a crazed, hateful gaze, the man used his last bit of strength to curse the entire Goth bloodline. The clergyman looked at the hole in his chest in astonishment, unable to believe that his time had run out. He groaned in pain one last time as the mysterious hooded attacker turned to leave. The mysterious figure who had eliminated the deacon walked with cold, silent footsteps out of the dungeon. However, heavy footsteps blocked his escape route, and a firm voice asked if the intruder intended to leave already. Isaac appeared majestically at the dungeon entrance, holding a bright lantern to block the attacker's exit. The hooded figure immediately stopped, as he realized he had fallen perfectly into the boy's trap. Isaac smiled coldly in the darkness, commenting that it was a pity they had to meet in such a tragic way. The young heir revealed the hooded figure's true identity, calling the man Bishop Levonius. At the same time, the outside of the building was also surrounded by a group of soldiers. Not far away, Kyle and Randolph, hiding in the trees, also observed everything. They discussed among themselves, if the young master guessed correctly, are they from the old church? That's right. Seeing their work ruined, they came to silence the witnesses. I didn't expect the young master to guess so accurately. Randolph looked toward the group, his eyes pensive, then muttered, the old church, huh? They made a fortune from near, yet neither I nor Pickle knew anything about it. Ah, no, wait, not exactly. It's not that we didn't know. We knew perfectly well it was dirty money, so we turned a blind eye and didn't ask any questions. Kyle glanced at him briefly. Then he stood up and said, now that you know, don't end up with a pathetic conclusion like Pickle. You still have a family to protect. These words seemed to awaken Randolph. His hands clenched in determination. Seeing this, Kyle nodded with satisfaction. Let's focus on the work. There are 13 people in total. Clean them all up. Don't let anyone get in the young master's way. As they spoke, they drew the sharp swords at their side. Back inside the room, the cold voice of Levonius also rang out. You don't seem surprised to see me. Or has the Marquis's son been special since birth? He spoke while wearing his familiar, compassionate smile. But at that very moment, Isaac's eyes widened. An attack struck directly toward him. Luckily, Isaac dodged at the very last possible moment. It turned out the attack toward Isaac was a wooden stake. It was strong enough to pierce through the wall. Isaac immediately guessed. Did he use teleportation onto the pile of stakes, or is that magic power from that grimoire? Reflecting, he said, I'm very surprised too. I didn't think you would personally come here. Responding to the words, Levonius also curled his lip. Is that so? Actually, I am also quite saddened. I didn't expect the deacon to fall into darkness so easily. But in any case, he should be grateful to me. After all, he brought the seeds of disaster straight to me. The words just finished, and this guy drew another sharp stake from his side and threw it straight at the protagonist with wind-tearing speed. Isaac's eyes remained focused. He brought his hand forward, and in a single moment, Isaac deflected this sharp stake, causing it to pierce deep into the stone floor. Levonius's expression became flustered as things didn't go his way. How can you use ice magic? He shouted loud. But Isaac only replied calmly, who knows, maybe I just sold my soul to the devil. Levonius's expression began to turn ugly, but then he became a bit calmer. Isaac, do you remember? When you were just born, it was I who performed your purification ceremony. Back then, I wasn't happy at all when you appeared in this world. Do you study history? Isaac shrugged and replied, Yes, just like everyone else. Livonius stepped forward and said, then you must know that your birth was a mistake. Most of the believers here are from the borderland tribes, savage, cruel barbarians who go around looting and causing trouble. Yet your father, Count Goes, wanted to make peace with them. Then he married a barbarian woman and gave birth to you. That marriage went against the will of heaven, so it was only natural that you bore a curse from the moment you were born. You shouldn't have existed in this world. Hearing this, Isaac's eyes showed some anger. That sounds grating, especially coming from someone who wants to take my life. Opposite, Livonius kept his sneering smile. Do you know? The cultists often use this type of stake for sacrificial rituals, truly a bunch of savages. Today you will lose your life at their hands. Thus, the link between Goth and the barbarians will end, and this land will be purified. Saying that, several other sharp stakes began flying toward Isaac. Isaac also focused his magic into the palm of his hand. In the palm of his hand appeared two sharp pieces of ice. With this, the protagonist immediately and easily blocked Livonius's attack. That made his expression confused, thinking, this isn't just ordinary ice. He's hitting every single flying stake precisely. How is that possible? This had to be thanks to the training Isaac had done with Lucas in his previous life. After being sent flying by Lucas, the protagonist panted and said, Lucas, let's stop here for today. I'm completely exhausted. Lucas said with a teasing tone, you're already tired. Isaac retorted, what do you mean already? It's been nearly an hour. Lucas held out his hand to help Isaac up, saying, but your swordsmanship has progressed. Before, you couldn't even block one of my attacks, yet today you blocked 5 times in a row. The protagonist shook his head. It's all thanks to your excellent teaching. Why don't you go compete to become a knight? Why stay by my side and waste your talent? He replied with a smile. Forget it. My swordsmanship is just average. What's truly impressive is your imagination, young master. Returning to reality, attacks were constantly being launched at Isaac. However, Isaac blocked them all. While fighting, he thought, why did I suddenly remember his words? Back then, Lucas didn't explain anything further, but now I understand what he meant. This imagination was a product of the days spent under house arrest. Since I couldn't see the world outside, my inner senses became increasingly sharp. Throughout those long hours lost in dreams, I fought Lucas countless times. From envisioning magic I couldn't yet cast, to painting a future that seemed impossible. It was those countless experiences in my mind that created the me of today. Opposite, Livonius launched another attack. Seeing that, Isaac also waved his hand to counter. The attacks of both collided in midair, creating a loud explosion. Isaac thought to himself, Lucas, you really are a great teacher. By this point, all the wooden stakes Livonius had brought were completely exhausted. However, Isaac did not let his guard down. Surely this isn't your only card, is it? To reach the rank of bishop and have to rely on a grimoire to launch some stakes that don't look divine at all. Hearing him say that, Livonius gritted his teeth in anger. To avoid revealing my signature techniques, I refrained from using my divine power directly. But now, there's no other choice. He threw the book in his hand to the ground, focusing magic power into his palm. Open your eyes and look at this. This is the divine power gifted to me, holy fire. Isaac's eyes widened as he looked up and saw a giant blue fireball floating in midair. However, that only made the protagonist feel more confused. This is holy fire. Livonius nodded proudly. Exactly. This purifying flame, mediocre mages couldn't copy it even in their dreams. With this, your ice crystals will evaporate in. Before he could finish his sentence, Isaac interrupted. Are you talking about this? At this moment, an identical fireball appeared in his hand, leaving the fat man extremely confused, not understanding why. Livonius seemed unable to accept it and angrily questioned, how could you create that flame? Isaac answered in an incredibly casual tone, it's simple, just create fire and compress it twice. This made Livonius feel even more incredulous. Are you kidding me? Power doesn't work that way. Responding to the words, Isaac educated this fat old man. With the power of the old church, maybe that's true, but it seems I am a heretic. Because my magic is parallel magic, and thanks to that, I can do this. Just as he finished speaking, the flame in his hand suddenly burned more fiercely than ever. Then, it even turned purple. Witnessing that, Livonius's eyes nearly popped out of his head. Nonsense, how is that possible? How could such power be granted to a bloodline that carries such filthy blood? Isaac extinguished the magic on his hand and said, oh, maybe the gods favor me more than that. The words made Livonius's face stiffen. His hands began to tremble. That's blasphemy. I have trained this power for decades. As soon as he finished speaking, he fired the fireball in his hand straight toward Isaac with wind-tearing speed. While the protagonist still stood there calmly, thinking, decades. I've been practicing it all my life." His gaze became sharp and cold. He slowly reached his hand forward. A purple pillar of fire, even more terrifying, erupted from his fingers. It pierced through the blue fireball and headed straight for Livonius, causing the man's face to break out in cold sweat. Isaac said calmly, "Since I pity you both, Bishop, I'll let you know why I had to die. And the reason is, it would be troublesome if it was revealed that I know how to use magic." Just like that, Livonius took the magic attack head-on, and in the end, his body was scorched to black charcoal. As for Isaac himself, he coughed violently after that terrible attack, as maintaining magic of this scale for this long was still too much for him. The person who arrived was Kyle. He was supporting Randolph, whose body was covered in blood. His eyes started in surprise when he looked ahead, where a pile of ashes was already burned black, and asked, "What happened here?" Isaac turned to look at him with a hesitant gaze, then thought, "Unlike Bill, Kyle hasn't signed the contract. It's best if I hide the fact that I know how to use magic." Thinking that, he fabricated an excuse. The deacon and the bishop had a falling out, and as you can see, they ended up destroying each other. This story made Kyle feel somewhat surprised. Is it really like that? Isaac also felt equally skeptical of him, not intending to ask anything more. How, he wondered to himself. While Kyle didn't ask anything else, he announced, "I've cleaned up the holy knights outside." Isaac nodded but then fell into deep thought and asked, "And what about Randolph?" Kyle looked at Randolph briefly and replied, "He asked me to take care of his family." Time passed quickly. Randolph's funeral was held. Even the family head was present to attend. In another corner, Randolph's wife and 2 sons were weeping with sorrowful expression. From afar, Isaac observed this quietly and then asked, "How did Randolph die? At the very least, we should inform his family." Kyle responded, "Those holy knights are highly skilled, but Randolph could have survived if I had given my all." The statement left Isaac slightly silent. After a few seconds, he asked, "Do you mean you didn't do that?" "I had to play the role of an ordinary soldier until I could kill that man," Kyle replied. But this gave Isaac a strange new thought. "It means you accepted staying hidden until your revenge was complete, even at the cost of your best friend's life." On this side, Kyle continued to warn Isaac, "I'm telling you this in advance, young master, just as a precaution. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, I would still act exactly the same way." He spoke with an incredibly serious face. Isaac turned to ask, "Even if I were the one helping you take revenge?" Kyle affirmed once more, "That's right. The day I reveal my full strength can only be that day." Isaac understood that the day he was talking about was the day he would collect his blood debt as Kyle, not as Carlson. Thinking this, he only replied calmly, "I understand. Neither you nor I are the type of people worthy of attending a proper funeral." Time passed. The scene shifted to inside a carriage. At this moment, Isaac and his father were having a quick conversation. His father spoke first. "The negotiations with the Holy See have been completed. In exchange for us turning a blind eye to the old bishop's crimes, they will stop collecting the 10% tax, and they won't dare send a new bishop here either. Though we don't know how long they will keep their word. For now, Goth has escaped the mess of the old church, just as you calculate." Isaac nodded slightly. In his heart, he felt a bit of joy. Good, the obstacle has cleared. Time to prepare for the next step. On this side, Count Goth continued, "Next time Carlson is here, I will praise you properly. For now, let's talk about something else." He took a deep breath to compose himself. He clasped his 10 fingers together and admitted, "I didn't know a thing." From the fact that the cult's rituals were so brutal, to the fact that they brought 13 holy knights, and even that the old bishop himself was the one who created that perverse cult to engage in depraved acts, I was completely blind. While you knew everything, and I knew absolutely nothing. What on earth happened to you? Before I went to Winterband, you were just a weak child, hence the special conditions. And now, I can't even guess what you're thinking anymore." Isaac also went silent at this confession. After a few seconds, he replied, "I am simply acting in the interest of our family." At that moment, he seemed to have returned to being the old Isaac, who had witnessed the downfall of his family. Meanwhile, Goth silently looked at him and said, "Isaac, I married Adele when I was 14. Back then, we didn't even share a language. From culture and habits to our ways of thinking, we were worlds apart. She was a girl with a wild streak. That time for both of us was nothing short of hell, because we were just tools used to extinguish the war between the two sides. But precisely because of that, Adele and I made a vow to each other that there is no way we would turn our children into tools of the family anymore. Even though the true meaning of this life remains a mystery, we promise to help you live lives of your own. Phew, I thought I'd have to wait until you grew up a bit more to tell you this. But who knew you mature so fast? Looking at that face of yours, you're wondering why I'm telling you this, aren't you? He reached out to pat Isaac's head and advised, "It means it's perfectly fine for you to just carefree, be a normal child." Isaac silently pressed his lips together and nodded. "Yes, sir." In another development, inside a forest, a large man was rushing to report to his captain. "Boss, there's a letter sent from Go." The bald man was startled. "What letter? Give it here and let me see." He grabbed the letter while speaking, then casually threw it straight into the fire in front of him. "I'm short on firewood, and this came at the perfect time." The underling started in panic. "Wait, why did you burn it?" The boss shouted loudly, "Shut up. Those pieces of paper aren't worth a penny. No matter how many times they send this kind of stuff, those people will never be the masters of this land." Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to Goth's office. At this point, he had summoned Isaac and Kyle for a reward. "Isaac, Kyle, you have done very well. I called you here today to reward your efforts. First, Carlson, what would you like to receive?" Carlson was silent for a moment before saying something that surprised Goth. "I just want to continue serving young Master Isaac." Hearing this, Goth reminded him, "If you return to Winterband, you could be promoted to captain." Responding to his words, Kyle remained firm in his thinking. "I would rather stay where I can actually be of help." The Count tapped the table lightly and replied, staying by Isaac's side, "All right, if that is your wish, I agree. With Carlson as his bodyguard, I feel much more at ease." Afterward, he made an official decision. "I appoint Carlson as Isaac's personal bodyguard and reward you with 200 denarii." Carlson hurried to bow and thank. Then Goth turned to his son. "And now it's your turn, Isaac. Speak. What do you want?" Isaac quickly stated his wish. "I want the Fickle family's territory." This made the Count startle. "Do you mean Winfeld?" Time passed quickly. The scene shifted to the training grounds. At this moment, Isaac and Kyle were preparing to spar with each other. Their wooden swords clashed, creating a sharp sound in the air. Isaac's small body was pushed back, finally sitting down on the ground. Meanwhile, Kyle said, "Good defense, but you still don't have enough strength to stand firm." Isaac breathed heavily, wiping his sweat. Kyle focused in thought. Then he suddenly said, "Why did you suddenly ask to spar?" Isaac plunged his sword into the ground, speaking with determination. "It's to take over Winterband." Kyle asked, "What does Isaac intend to do in Winfeld?" But the protagonist refused to answer. "You don't need to know yet. Just understand that it will help your quest for revenge. Now, let's go again." The statement left Kyle slightly silent. After that, they quickly returned to their prepared stances. The protagonist was the one who attacked first. His body lunged forward with a burst of speed. His sword was immediately blocked by Kyle with ease. However, he was slightly surprised inside. "I heard he had never learned swordsmanship, but the way he swings his sword is strangely beautiful. It's not fast, nor is it overly sharp, but the attack rhythm is flawless." A level like this usually requires practice from childhood, but his physique is far too weak to have done that. How could that be? Winfeld wondered to himself. Then this guy focused his eyes to observe. Next, he crouched down slightly to gain momentum to lunge. Seeing this, Isaac was startled. As soon as he closed in, Kyle's sword swung up at lightning speed. Although Isaac was able to block it in time, his body was constantly trembling from the strain. Then Kyle suddenly relaxed his hands, holding the sword. His body lightly stepped aside, enough to make Isaac lose his balance and lunge forward. Seizing that opportunity, Kyle retracted his leg and delivered a heavy kick straight into Isaac, causing him such pain that his eyes bulged and his mouth opened wide. His small body flew backward. Kyle remarked coldly, "With this level, you don't stand a chance in Winfeld." Isaac clutched his stomach, gritting his teeth. "It's precisely because of that I'm asking for your guidance." Kyle looked at Isaac with a surprised gaze, then revealed a truth. "You can use magic." Isaac asked, probing, "Do you mean the deacon and bishop stopped fighting to the death?" Kyle denied it. The deacon didn't have the skills to defeat the bishop. When the protagonist asked how Kyle could be so sure, Kyle replied that whether it's magic or aura, when reaching a certain level, one can measure an opponent's strength. Hearing this, the protagonist suddenly smiled. "So you admit you've reached that level? I thought you were hiding your skill." Kyle mocked back, "You've known since I dealt with those holy knights, haven't you?" As he said this, Isaac hurriedly checked if anyone was around, and only after confirming no one was, he breathed a sigh of relief. Then Isaac admitted, "All right, using magic is easier to practice for a while, but the Goth family would be isolated in politics because of the special constitution of the ancestor, like a certain 10th circle mage." Hearing this, Kyle broke into a cold sweat. 10th circle. Are you talking about Sieg von Gogh? Isaac nodded confidently. Exactly. He is the only 10th circle mage in history. Old books record that he also suffered from mana rioting. He collected artifacts across the continent with courage and seems to have found his own way to suppress that constitution. But what about Maze? Kyle quickly understood the problem Isaac wanted to address. If you can use magic, it means you have overcome that sickness just like that 10th circle mage. Isaac nodded, explaining more clearly. Exactly. Now think about it for a second. A century has passed since Sieg burned the imperial capital, and now another person with that constitution is born in the Goth family. And what's more, it's already cured. Do you think the royal family and the other nobles will leave us alone? No, they will turn me into a political pawn or find a way to assassinate. Do you regret following the Goth family? Kyle finished listening and said his true thoughts. Yes, I regret it to death. But I'm not the type to turn my back because of the past. The one who should regret it is you, young master, he said while lunging to attack again, making the protagonist panic. Wait, hold on, I thought the training was over. Just like that, his pathetic screams rang out across the training ground. Time passed quickly, until a month later. At this time, a caravan was escorting Isaac to the Windfelt area. Inside the carriage, the butler asked him, "Are you sure about going to Windfelt like this? Is it okay to report it? Han and Gisela will be devastated." Isaac turned his head away, answering in a tone that sounded indifferent. They aren't the type of people to care about such things. Now it's too late. The butler continued, "The only one who cares is you, young master." Isaac's face opposite him seemed to be deep in thought. He thought to himself, when I unleashed that purple flame, I had a feeling my body wouldn't last much longer. I still can't completely control the mana rioting. I don't want any risks. Thinking this, he said, better to let them be hurt than to lose their lives. Outside, Kyle was accompanying the group. He focused his eyes, scanning all around in vigilance. Meanwhile, the butler's explanation continued. Windfelt is the old territory of the Fickle family. It's a land tainted by the blood of magical beasts. Nothing grows or survives there. This is also the front line against enemies who want to bypass Winterban. Isaac's gaze was distracted, as if he hadn't heard what the butler was saying. He thought aimlessly, "It looks exactly like the final scene at the mansion I saw in my previous life." Then suddenly, a strange horn sounded. The carriage stopped abruptly, causing it to shake. Panicked voices rang out everywhere. A horn, that's a signal that magical beasts have appeared. A soldier ran over from the side, informing, "Young master, magical beasts are coming. Stay inside, don't go out." Isaac saw the figure of this person and was stunned. "Why are you here, Han?" Before his eyes was the trembling figure of the man, trying to tightly grip his spear.